No, I forgot the juniors are spicy.
All right, good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Thursday, January 4th, 2024 Planning Board meeting. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Introduction to board members. All the way to my left is Paul Amatucci, Jerry Graybill, Don Ganarelli, myself, Michael LaRue, Phil Roy, Les Bodwell, and Rick Rains. The first thing we're going to work with today is the planning board position appointments for secretary, chairman, and vice chairman for the 2024 year. So is there any recommendations?
I nominate Mike for chair.
I will second that.
Okay, further discussion? I guess I'll do it again.
That's nice because we thought you should.
Yeah, great. Thank you guys.
I recommend Phil as vice
Well, hold
chairman.
on, we got to vote. Yeah, we got a motion and a
Excuse me.
second. And now, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Now,
Now,
I recommend Phil as vice chairman.
I'll second that.
okay, further discussion?
Wait a minute. Don and Paul? Okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
Suppose we should ask Phil if he is willing to accept
I
it.
am willing to accept that nomination.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next is the secretary. So, secretary role is basically if the chair and the vice chair isn't here in a meeting, they take over and they host the meeting.
I will nominate Mr. Paul Amatucci because he did a fantastic
Yes,
job
he
in
did.
both of our absence in the past.
I'll second that.
Okay, further discussion?
Yes.
And that would be?
So what are the duties of the secretary?
It's basically the backup to the backup to host the meeting.
In case these two aren't here, you host.
And get us coffee.
And you did a great job the last time. That's
Yeah.
why you got nominated.
Because you were whispering in my ear.
Well, I can whisper in your ear.
All right. Well. All right.
Okay. All in favor?
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Now we
Paul.
have our appointments for
You're welcome,
the
sir.
planning board.
I just get ambushed.
Yeah, you did.
All right, so next is a public hearing for Berwick Community Garden, conditional use, 20 Public Safety Way, U004, Lot 142/Zone VO. So if you could just come up and just give us a brief description, and then we'll let members of the public speak.
Rita Cottrell, 8A Goodwin Street. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So just give you a quick background. About a year ago, Dennis and I started teaching classes at the library on gardening. So that was sort of our foray into living here and being part of the community and being noticed for our abilities to do gardening. So in the spring, through Envision Berwick, it came up that there was an interest in doing a community garden. So in April, I sent out a community questionnaire survey through social media, and we got really good response. So after that response, it seemed like it would be a good thing to pursue. So we started a site search, and I also started going around to other community gardens in the vicinity. I think I visited 12 altogether. In July, we met before the, or was it June? I think, was it June that we met before the select board? I think it was. And they approved the site. In July, we started doing public meetings, inviting people who were interested in and curious about the garden to come to monthly meetings. We learned a lot from people about what they were looking for, and we took really good notes, and that's when we started with our actual planning part of it. in late July, I went to visit Seattle, and I visited 12 gardens while I was there. So I've seen a lot of different gardens, all different styles, from little tiny neighborhood pocket gardens up to multi-acreage gardens, and taken all of that information in, and it's really helped to inform how we've designed the garden. So we've continued with designing the garden, and we think that we've come up with a really great design that will meet the needs of the community. A lot of different kinds of needs for the community.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone's free to state their comments, questions, concerns?
Okay, hi, I'm Maureen Nikitas, Heritage Drive in Berwick, and I'm speaking on behalf of Amrita and her project. I did a little volunteer work at the library garden under her, and she did a great, successful job there. She's obviously done a lot of research and has a lot of knowledge, so I just want to say yes, that's my vote as a member of the community.
Okay, thank you.
Tom Wright, Cemetery Road. I was at your meeting, last year, and gave a little bit of a history of that piece of property. I'm going to run through that again for people that are just tuning in now. The site is over at what was the former elementary school, the Estabrook Elementary School. The school was built in 1948. And in the late 60s, the addition where the police station is now, the Doring part of it was built. After the Huzzy School was built, the district continued using that for kindergarten space and Head Start and things like that, but eventually they gave it up and Berwick reacquired it. Shortly after that, that's when the police station moved in over there. This used to be the police station here at the time, that was status quo for a few years. About 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I guess it was, when the Downtown Vision Committee was formed, the precursor to the Envision Berwick Committee. One of the first things they did as a group was start identifying parcels in town that could be used to promote the community. And that parcel was noticed right away, obviously, as a big open space near the center of town. We briefly had a contract with a outfit out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, to build assisted living there. They had plans for a building with 24 apartments there. I think it was 24. But they didn't get their funding at the time, so they couldn't proceed with it. So it was back on the shelf. And a lot of different things were proposed there. And then when Berwick started looking at replacing the fire station, and we're looking at different sites, the fire department did a study about where the growth in Berwick was and where the number of calls were. And that study actually showed that a new fire station would be best out on Pine Hill Road. We investigated several different parcels out there. None of them were really ideal. And that's when the public in Berwick started asking why we weren't building at the Estabrook School. We did a bunch of research. It came down to a town vote, and the town voted to put the fire station there rather than on Pine Hill. During that whole discussion, there was talk about what to do with the parcels of land there that were not being used by the police station or the fire department. And a lot of different proposals were put forward, including a skateboard park, a dog park, a music venue, things like that. And at the time, I argued that we needed to really look and see what happened at that site before we decided what would go there. It has always been the intention of the town, it seems like, that something was going to happen there. And when Amrita talked to me about possible places to place a community garden, is it seemed like that would be a much less intrusive use of that than a dog park or a music venue or anything like that. So I thought it was a good place for it. I've worked a lot with Dennis and Amrita over the last 6 months towards, getting this all set up. It's come together nicely, I think. We've been, negotiating with the police department and the fire department about, how it's going to impact them. We seem to have come to an agreement about what we need to do to alleviate any future problems. Part of the project is going to be extending the walking paths in Berwick, and we're going to be using some of the tax increment financing money that we can use for promoting the greenways and things like that in Berwick. And we're going to be using some of that money to probably use that to build the bridge over the drainage gully there and to promote the pathway up towards Logan Street. So that's a brief history of what was there, what went there, and what has been proposed there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can go.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry to. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jeremy Caston on Blackberry Hill Road. I just want to say that, keep this very brief. From an Envision Berwick standpoint, a community garden checks off two huge and critical things. And that is community and gardening. Those are wholesome and important, and I think the very fabric of Berwick. And I'm proud to support this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeremy.
Mr. Chair, we
Yep.
did have one letter sent in that
Okay.
we should read to the board. It says, "Dear members of the Planning Board, I trust this letter finds you all well. I'm writing to express my concerns regarding the proposed community garden at the fire and police stations, a matter that has warranted careful consideration from all of you. While I appreciate the intent behind the community garden project, I believe it is crucial to consider the several potential issues that may arise due to its proximity to a fire and police stations, bearing in mind that I think there have been some changes since the person who wrote this letter was aware of this. My concerns center around the following key points. Security and safety. The nature of the emergency services provided by the fire and police station demands heightened security measures. How will the proposed community garden impact the station's security protocols, considering the potential for increased foot traffic in the vicinity? Emergency services access. It is imperative to ensure unimpeded access to the fire and police station at all times. Will the community garden design accommodate the need for quick and unrestricted entry and exit of emergency services vehicles? Noise and disturbances. Emergency services require a quiet and focused environment. How can we be certain that the community garden activities, events, or gatherings will not disrupt the essential work carried out by our first responders? Collaboration with emergency services. Has there been discussion with the fire and police department to gauge their perspective on the proposed community garden? What measures are in place to address potential liability issues associated with the community garden? I'm assuming all of these concerns have been examined and that any conditions will be made before approving the project. While community gardens are undoubtedly valuable assets, the unique operational needs of our fire and police stations would require a meticulous balance to ensure that the community garden complements rather than compromises the vital services provided by our emergency personnel. I respectfully request that these concerns be carefully taken into account. I appreciate your dedication. Sincerely, Lisa Chase, Berwick Select Board."
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Would that be in the later time? Can we discuss it again later?
Yeah, we can discuss that.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Nope. All right. I'll make a motion that we close this public hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? All right. Moving along is the first public comment. It's open to any non-agenda items. Okay. Moving along. We have no minutes to approve yet. Not yet.
Sorry, guys.
Okay. Then old business, Berwick Community Garden, conditional use, 20 Public Safety Way, U004, Lot 142, Zone VO.
All right. So the letter that expressed concerns, we've talked with.
You got to speak into the mic.
Oh, excuse
Yeah,
me.
just so the people at home can hear
Right,
you.
right.
Yeah.
Forget about that.
There's a copy so you can address them individually.
Okay. Yeah, so Dennis Jackson, Goodwin Street, Berwick. Okay. We've talked with Chief Town, and we've located the position for a stockade fence between the police activities and the garden, and that will keep anybody from wandering off the garden site and become in the way of the police department, and also keep anybody from walking from near the apartments towards the garden. So I think that issue's been taken care of. And then Chief Plant has asked that a chain link fence be placed around the propane tank, and that will be done. And as you may have seen on the walk, there's a large rock swale between the garden and the fire department, and there will be a fence around the garden. So we don't feel that there's likely chance anybody will wander out of the garden and into the space around the fire station. And we've designed the entrance from the parking area in front of the police and fire stations to guide people into the garden space without them walking out into the fire station apron with the equipment. So I think safety concerns have been addressed by our design and our communication with the chiefs.
Could I ask just for one little piece of clarification in what you just said about the swale that's located between the garden and the fire station? You said, when mentioning the swale, that there would be a fence around the garden. Did you mean that there would be a fence around the swale?
No,
Only around the garden?
around the garden.
Okay.
You know, on all four sides of the garden will have fence around it.
So once you cross the gate to get into the garden, you're in the garden?
You're in the garden.
Okay.
Yep.
So where is this stockade fence going to be? So
I think you got 'em.
I didn't hear it at the sidewalk.
Sorry, with the wind, it was pretty hard
Yeah.
to communicate. You got a map today,
Yes.
and that map shows the location of the stockade fence.
Oh, okay.
This one doesn't
You
have
see
it.
it, Paul?
It's
See,
parallel
chain-
to the
okay.
police station.
Stockade on the other side of the police
I'm
station?
thinking he's got a map that doesn't have it somewhere.
It's on this. It's on this one, Paul.
Yeah, it's on the.
Oh, it is on that one.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah.
Okay,
So the stockade fence will run along here
okay,
and all the way over to this fence.
perfect. That's great, yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm just curious, if I may,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. I know in Chief Town's original letter, looking at his third paragraph, he raised some concerns about the walkway between the buildings and the access. Would you, and we have to support our law enforcement folks and our public servants who provide a valuable service to our town and volunteer their time and serve in harm's way. So I take that to heart, those words, would you guys be at all agreeable to the possibility for two reasons? One, that proposed walkway goes right by a memorial to our fallen firefighters. It goes right by a memorial to a fallen law enforcement agent that was here in Berwick. And it's a high-traffic area. It will be a high-traffic area with the proposed foot traffic. Would you be agreeable to possibly just having the access from the other end and not using that footpath? Would that be a reasonable compromise?
So,
If I may, is that walkway has always been proposed for the public walkway. If you look at the original plans, is on the drafting of the plans, it shows that being used as a public access to that property. And as far as going past the two memorials, I can't think of a more fitting way of people to realize that those memorials are there, because most people don't realize those memorials are there. So if people are walking by, they're more likely to see them and recognize that there's been a past sacrifice made.
Tom, before you walk away, if I may, I think you hit exactly what I was thinking when you said that here's two memorials to two brave people that gave their lives in service of the public, and what a better way to memorialize them than people to see them. I actually stopped and looked at those memorials when I walked by today to go to that garden, and I think one of the other things that I may be wrong, but I think that this is public property. So, the public is, if I decide to take my kids out in that field right now and have a picnic, I don't think anyone could stop me. It's public property. So I think it's important to note that as well. I mean, we want to definitely respect the police and the fire department and the operation of their business. But I think, knowing that was actually always designed to be a public walkway, and it goes by those two memorials, I think makes that make even more sense.
And if I may, talking about the public walkway and stuff, that's all been part of our comprehensive plan, and our downtown vision is to make connecting walkways between all the different parcels that Berwick owns, the pieces down by the river, the pieces up by the library. And actually, as later on this year, I'm going to be looking at proposing another walkway on the other side of that property, coming off of Sullivan Street, looping around the wooded area up to Logan Street. So,
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
I have one question.
Okay.
I know anything over a 6-foot fence is a grudge fence, according to. Is this fence going to be enough security for the police department and the fire department? Is it going to be okay? I mean,
If I may
Please.
say two things. First of all, not all fences over 6 feet are considered a grudge fence.
Yeah.
Depends on the circumstance. But anything over 6 feet requires a permit because of engineering. So they could potentially do whatever height the community garden and the police department agrees upon. Just would matter as to whether or not I need the fencing company to give me engineering materials. Secondly, Mr. Chair, and I apologize if I'm out of line, but perhaps, Mr. The chief might want to, Mr. Chair, you might want to have the chief address some of these issues directly since he's here.
Yeah.
Just so to ease the board members' concerns, because I know there's some meeting.
Yep.
You're not getting out of it, chief, sorry. Because there is one item in the letter from Select Board Member Chase that was not something that was easily addressable, and I think would be good on the record from the chief as far as the noise and disturbances and whether or not the police department, I know I've spoken with the fire department about it, but whether or not the police department feels there is any concern for noise from a garden that would be disruptive to your business.
From noise coming from the garden towards us?
Yeah.
I don't have any issues with that whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
They might be a little irritated we test our sirens when we do shift changes and things like that, so that's something that you'll have to be accustomed to. Of course, we use them when we come and go. That should answer that question.
Thank you. I
Yep.
just wanted to make sure that all of her concerns were addressed as well.
I will speak really quickly on the walkway issue. I understand what Mr. Wright said, that has been defined as a walkway but I think it should be upgraded to meet what is now going to be asked of it. You're going to have people going back and forth between our two buildings, and you guys walk that today. It really isn't
It is
properly
quite narrow.
designed at this
It
point.
is quite narrow.
For rakes and shovels and wheelbarrows and things of that nature. My other concern, again, of that particular location where that walkway is just because of, if you look at the way my building is laid out, my cruisers feed out of that front door. So they're coming out of that front door into an area where we'll probably have increased foot traffic because of the community garden. So my concerns are safety-wise, safety-minded in that respect. So again, the walkway issue, if it's going to be a walkway and it's going to be used, it probably should be, in my mind, upgraded to meet the use that's going to be required of it.
And if I may, I didn't really pay particular attention to that walkway. Is it too narrow? Is that your concern?
Well, it actually is, the walkway, one could almost call it like an apron on the fire department. It goes up against the edge of the fire department and it comes out not a big distance. 3 feet maybe?
So it's not like
Yeah.
an ADA 5-foot?
No.
I think it would have to be upgraded anyways, because if the garden's going to be an ADA compliant, it needs to have at least a 5-foot walkway.
Yeah. So,
And so then I would ask the question about concern for safety and people using that. I mean, I don't personally envision this being a massively trafficked walkway. I don't know. I could be wrong. It could be, a whole community of gardeners here that, you all of a sudden you have parking in that parking lot. But, I mean, if your officers are coming out getting into cruisers, is that what you're saying? They park out front and they'd be coming in
There's
and
a
out?
drive-through garage right there.
Right.
There's a drive-through
The garage door
Like a Sally Port type
is
thing?
very close. It goes really between the two monuments that you referred to. Our cruisers feed out of that front door. We go around the back and we come out the front, kind of like the Bat Cave, if you remember that. So I'm just saying that traffic there is probably one of the more, safety-wise, one of the more sensitive areas. And you're asking people to do something on a walkway that isn't, at this time, really set up for what it's being asked of. So I'm just looking at, if we're going to have it there, let's make sure that the thing works
Yeah.
as far as.
So as the walkway, once it reaches, the walkway is a normal walkway up until the fire station.
Yes.
Once you get to the front door, like you said, it's just like it skirts around.
Yes.
And then it's paved, right? That's what
It's
it is.
pavement,
It's just
right.
a paved
Yes.
walkway. I think what they were saying is they're not going to really access it for wheelbarrow use and stuff like that. They're going to be using the top part to get all that stuff in. So they're not going to be it's more or less just going to be pedestrians walking through that area. All the stuff would be inside of the fenced area. But I do hear the concern about finishing, widening out that area for better access.
So you're saying, because I wasn't aware of this, so there's going to be an entrance on Logan Street
Yes. Yep. If you look at the top.
for construction and heavier
Yeah, for
equipment.
drop off,
Right.
for equipment or compost, wood
Right.
chips.
it's not shown on your map.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I
just see
saw
the
it.
hammerhead.
I didn't
Right.
see it, and I
Yeah,
didn't hear
it's,
it.
so at the Hammerhead area, they
Got it.
said there's a rolling gate, and that's where basically all their drop offs will be.
Okay.
And that's also where most of the people picking up produce would be coming up from the top and not from the bottom.
Got it. All right. Now that makes.
And if that is the case, would it be a reasonable ask? And I just, again, in the interest of supporting our public servants, they've brought up the point that, officer safety and traffic and policing issues, I am fully in support of the community garden, but from an officer safety standpoint, does it make sense to not have access via a walkway there for officer safety and have it all come in from the other end where the parking's at. If that is where,
Well, I mean,
if
as,
that's where your vehicle traffic is coming in and all of your supplies are coming in,
if
why do
people
you
can
need?
drive safe and be aware of people walking, I mean, that's an everyday occurrence everywhere around here. I mean, I don't think that's a.
But you have
significant-
emergency vehicles coming
Yeah,
out to
and
where you have
when people
pedestrians
hear
crossing.
sirens and see lights, they pay attention to those.
So I would, sort of as a compromise between what I'm hearing, if the walkway is improved and becomes wide, because people have double strollers, they may not have wheelbarrows, but they have strollers and things that they might come through there. The stockade fence that runs parallel to behind the police station, could that be extended to the new wide walkway, turn 90 degrees back towards your garage door and create a walled-off area to keep people from your area?
So ideally, yes, I would like to see that. That was left out intentionally at this point, only because we have to think of snow removal as well.
Sure.
It's a tight area, and if you look, we're very close to the, what I would call a natural cistern for water collection. There's not a lot of space there. And I need to be able to have that plowed. So if I enclose it completely at this point, I lose a little bit of the ability to push some snow in that direction.
Okay.
And until, that's why it was intentionally left open.
Okay.
With the intent that after a season or two, a winter season or two, if I can make that work, I would prefer to have it completely closed off. Yes.
Chief, could, just for just for clarity, can you show me on there where the police traffic goes and where that Sally Port is? I think I know, but I'd just like you to highlight it.
Yeah, you see the road and how it turns 90 right there. So, I mean, no one should be walking behind around that area. They should be going right.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I was confused when we were talking about the sidewalk.
It's more or less
cars
coming
coming out.
out of the Sally Port.
Yeah.
So they'd be going in through that. That's not the concern. The concern is them coming out. But, I mean,
But when you're walking from the parking lot, in order to access that walkway, you have to walk right in front of that garage door where you have emergency vehicles coming out.
well, when I got there, I didn't walk
I didn't
around that.
either.
You didn't?
No.
I could be mistaken.
I
but
walked
think
right
you-
on the sidewalk, and there was no.
And that is the point that I was trying to get to is,
Yeah.
do you have to cross that in front of that garage to
No.
get there? And we didn't, so.
No?
No.
Okay. I
And-
could,
But
I
I think
could be
again,
mistaken.
the sidewalk
I came
issue-
from the parking lot over across the street, so I walked around, and even Paul and I walked on the way
Yeah.
back, and we didn't go anywhere near the Sally Port. Now, parking in that parking lot, which they will have 6 spots, it is possible to have someone walk through there. But, I mean, at the same time, I mean, how many
Being a public
people-
place, people have the right to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right now. They
Right.
can park
Yeah.
there and walk
Yep.
in front of the bay, and
Yep.
like you said, an emergency, a door goes up, a cop car comes out, generally you're going to get out of the way.
Yeah.
I understand the concern completely,
Yep.
but I like the idea of separating that spot between the walkway and the back garage door some. I understand your snow removal concern. I don't know if there's some kind of compromise as to a delineation to keep people from just kind of heading down that way.
Right.
But maybe we can figure that out.
I don't think the entrance to the garage is the concern, right? It's, you guys come out of there, on an emergency call, say, is that more the concern coming out of the garage?
His concern is valid because essentially, in approach to the garden, if they're using the walkway that we're referring to now, they still have the ability to walk towards where my cruisers are going into that garage. So they'll be walking into, basically onto our driveway.
Yeah, I saw the need to separate it when I was there.
Yeah. But,
Correct.
I mean,
That-
And I
maybe a
agree with
hedge or
you. It's just a
vegetative
matter of
area.
that snow removal
Well,
aspect that I
sure.
can't predict at this
yeah,
point.
but as of right now, could someone walk around that area?
Yes.
Yes, they can, but there isn't a community garden there at this
Right,
point.
I know, but,
Right.
I mean, it's.
So just being kind of devil's advocate, I've seen some videos where people go on police lots with cameras.
Hmm?
And some police react one way, some police react another way. One of the things that I kind of picked up on, having watched a few of them, is that that area needs to be posted,
Yes.
that it's a restricted area?
Yes.
Is that posted as a restricted area?
It is on the-
Or is that something we can do to,
So.
maybe some signs there, and then you still have the ability to push the snow, but there's clear signs? Because I'm guessing people that are at the community garden aren't going to be, mischievous and going in your parking lot if they know don't go there.
Well, we wouldn't be putting the signs up for those people. We'd be putting them up for the ones that need to read the signs.
Have nefarious intent.
Yeah.
Great.
There you go.
I'm just looking for, a compromise that meets everybody's thing. I think, to me, some signage or.
Ideally, keeping people out of an area that you have a concern with prior to them getting there is the ideal solution. So yes, the signage, if you look around the other side of the building, it's marked, and to be quite honest with you, the reason for the stockade fence is because during the preparation for the community garden, which I'm not opposed to the community garden, but we had foot traffic back and forth going past 4 signs saying limited access, no access. And just, I deal with human beings all the time.
Sure.
Human nature is if I can see that I only need to go right there, and I can go from point A to point B, and you're
Save
telling me
two
I need to
steps.
go
Right.
to point A, point B,
And
point
you're
C,
gonna do
point
it.
D.
And having that stockade fence would definitely.
Which is
Yeah.
where we
Yep.
came to an agreement, and,
Yep.
and that would resolve that. And the one issue that you're referring is that one open hole that is
Yep.
still there. And again, I brought the concern to the town manager, and I'm not sure if he talked with Highway yet or not, but it was purely stopped at that point based on the snow removal issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have no problem at it being 6 feet high,
Fence.
the fence? Yeah.
6 feet is adequate.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Would you like it higher?
It would probably help, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, the back section. Right.
How high would you like it?
If you gotta speak, you gotta speak in front of the microphone. It's just so the people that are listening.
We have certain restrictions when it comes to juveniles. We're supposed to keep juveniles from sight and sound from adults, all adults. So if I have a juvenile in custody, which we do on occasion, we're supposed to keep these people protected. So what we've got now is we're bringing more activity into a place that didn't have any until this came along. So now the issue arises is what are we going to do when we have these juveniles? We're going to be essentially, in some respects, kind of parading them along in front of the community garden.
So what is
That
the
was
height?
the other reason for the stockade fence, is to give the privacy between the two spaces.
What does right look like for you guys? 8 foot, 10 foot? What works?
I mean, 8 foot would be optimal, but again, I want to make it clear that I'm not here to oppose the community garden.
Right.
I've been
It's
asked
just
to
just
tell-
your concerns,
Right.
and we're voicing them out.
Right.
So with the elevation, like I've noticed, like when I was walking out there at the site walk, I've noticed halfway through a 6-foot fence, you won't see anything. If you're
Right.
halfway in the garden, you're not going to see anything. If you're all the way at the top,
You
you could possibly see people.
You could.
I
agree with
mean,
you.
it 8 foot and it's an extra 2 feet going to make a difference.
Well, I think that it would in the sense that to go all the way to the top, not only do you have the 2 extra feet, but now you're hundreds of yards from the sight line of being able to identify
Well,
a juvenile versus an adult.
I wouldn't say hundreds of yards, but hundreds
Feet.
of feet.
Feet.
Yeah. Okay. hundreds
So
of yards,
8
it
feet
wouldn't
would
be
be
an issue.
optimal. We can
Yeah.
we can survive with 6 feet. Again, this is all new to us.
Right.
We're trying to picture what it's
Right.
going to look like when it's finished.
What's the proposed height right now of the stockade?
6 feet.
6 feet?
Yeah.
So you're saying in the back of the building, 8 feet would be
Yes.
better?
And then around, like the rest of it that goes around where your parking lot. So you're saying the first 101 feet, you'd want 8 feet tall, and then the rest could be 6 feet around it,
I would say if we're going to go with 8 feet, let's go with 8 feet.
all the way around.
Yeah. Just for appearance-wise, I think it's going to look
Yeah.
a little better.
I guess my personal opinion is that if that's a request from our police department and it's a doable thing, I'm in favor of 8 feet for the entire fence.
On your cop cars, do you have tinted windows?
Yeah, we do.
So my understanding of privacy, to keep things private, that's one of the reasons why you have tinted windows.
To some extent, yes.
And then you would be bringing them in a sally into the sally for the most part.
Not always with juveniles.
Okay. Would you be going through the front of the police station?
Nope, we use the side entrance closest to School Street
Side entrance. So you're talking. So
I'm talking this end of the building down here. This is actually the garage.
yeah.
I'm talking about this entrance
Right.
here.
Okay. So the chances of seeing something from this side from being over here, I mean, with this corner, it'd be very hard to see it.
Again, I'm
I'm
being
just
asked
trying to
to
play
predict
devil's advocate
things
of
that I
this.
really can't. You're
Yeah.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
if people really want to see,
Yeah.
if they really, really want to see, they're going
Right.
to stand on a
Right.
bucket and look over the fence.
Right. And they have their right
We're
to do
just
that.
doing what we can to make. I can look people in the eye and say that we did what we could.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's my thought is just being a free man or a free woman. We have the right to go onto a public property as long as it's not restricted access.
Right.
So at that point, anyone could walk around those areas and watch kids being brought into the police station if they're in the parking lot. I mean, so to change something just because a garden's going in there when anyone has that access at any point. Like if I wanted to walk around the fire station, I could walk around the fire station. I mean, we all have that right to do that. Me personally, I think that would be a little bit of a tall stretch. But that's just me. I mean, if
The issue is we've changed use. You're now inviting
right,
people to
right,
the space.
but
You're
the
creating a
privacy
space.
isn't on the people. The privacy would be more towards the police, creating more privacy for that.
It's an
Yes,
officer,
for-
it's an officer safety
Yes,
issue.
for what
I see
we
it as
do for
officer
business, sometimes privacy is very, very important.
Right, but
Some
that's-
people do not like to talk to us
Yes.
when everyone else can see
Right.
them.
And that also being a double-edged sword, that bringing more people to the fire and police station would be welcoming people to visit, right?
I like visitors, but
Yeah.
some of the people that we need to talk to
Mhm.
are not comfortable being seen talking to the police.
Right.
They do not want that to happen. I can also tell you that by nature, a lot of them smoke.
Yeah.
So I find myself outside of the building, which now we really have had no issue with because there's been no traffic out there. Occasionally, we'd see a person walk by.
Right.
We've now we're changing the use, so you're having something there that's soliciting people to come use it, which is a good thing.
Yes.
I'm trying to say, in order for me to continue to do business safely and to keep all those things in mind, that's where this fence comes up. How am I going to prohibit people from walking through places that they really can't be?
Right.
And how am I going to protect the people that I need to protect? And a fence came as
Yeah,
the
fence
easiest
is good.
solution.
I agree with that fence. The stockade fence is good.
Yeah, I think, Mike, if I can add
Yeah.
too, this is a situation where both components here are our community, right? So it's not like you have a neighbor who's being difficult and wants to. I mean, this is our law enforcement, right? This is the people we call when we need help, right? So, and I think being a community garden, I think that whatever. I don't know. I'm always kind of yielding to within reason. I mean, if they want an 8-foot fence versus a 6-foot fence, if that makes them feel more comfortable, I don't think that's a huge
It's a reasonable
ask.
accommodation.
It's going to be funded out of the same tax dollars that we would have funded the 6-foot fence. So personally, I think that we can almost get into a, like oppositional stance here, but I don't think that's really what we want, right? We want to be, we're all part of the community here.
The fence issue came up late in the game. The way this unfolded, from my perspective, wasn't ideal. And I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just
Right.
saying it wasn't ideal. So discussions that we should have had months ago have just taken place. So when we talked the other day, 6-foot fence comes up because I'm looking at a section of 6-foot fence that we currently have. But when you walk the property and you're standing up there and you realize I'm 6 feet tall, I can see everything regardless of a 6-foot fence. I can still see everything. You may have had the proposal come to you with an 8-foot fence on it. We wouldn't be having this discussion. It just came down to timing. So the difference between you're seeing a 6 identified there and us saying 8 tonight is really because this fence thing is new, correct?
Yeah, that was the compromise that you guys
Yes,
had made. Okay.
yes.
I think that we'll likely see a motion to, I'm going to be making a motion to ask for the fence to be raised to 8 feet. I would also ask this question, not necessarily first, but in addition to, has there been an answer from the people who plow that corner? What is acceptable in terms of where the fence starts and stops and getting the snow removal taken care of?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's
That's
definitely
just
isn't a
Public Works, right?
James Bellissimo, town manager. I talked with Jody, director of public works. Obviously, if there's a major snow event, it's going to add additional, inconvenience that it might have to get snow blowed out. But overall, there's built-in snow storage on the plan, said that they can make it work. But we didn't get in as proposed. So we didn't get into detail with it. Taking it 90.
I think that needs attention. I think that
Well, does the snow just get pushed into that swale right there?
Built into both the, if you look at the plan, there's space built in for snow storage.
Yeah.
So along the asphalt area, there's a 20-foot gap between where the stockade fence is and the asphalt. So I think
That should be adequate.
normal circumstances, they'll be able to manage it, and then anything else, they'll just have to, like I said, snow blow or
remove it.
But they
And
were
also, would we consider a vegetative barrier along the walkway? Like, it screens that area, and it provides, thou shall walk this way, and keeps people from meandering off that path. I don't know if that's something.
I think I'm not sure about like the exacts, but I think any visual cues and barriers, and I think over time signage will be implemented just to make it work. So
I don't know if this is a feasible thing or not, but I just kind of had an idea about either having a gate on that fence or a removable section of fence so that in the wintertime, this section of fence can be taken away when the garden's not being used, and then you still got a straight shot pushing the snow.
Well, yeah, because then there's still that buffer in between the stockade fence and the food forest. Yeah, I mean, that could be possible.
You could-
That doesn't seem like it'd be that hard to
we
do.
could do like a series of bollards that are chained and that are removable.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
So most of the time, when it comes to compromising on this stuff, it's not like we can recommend to the developers. We would ask them, would they be willing to accept that they would want to put a 6-foot fence? It's not like we say you have to have an 8-foot fence or a 6-foot fence. It's, are you amendable to putting in an
Or you make
8-foot
it
fence?
or you can make it a condition of approval, can you not?
I guess that would be a Hannah question.
I mean, we do conditions of approval all the time.
Well, you said we have to have a permit, to make it higher than 6 foot, correct?
Something, yes. So anything over 6 feet tall by state code requirements requires engineering. So they would have to have a permit. And just so you guys are aware, I realize that yes, it's all going to come out of the same funds. But I don't know if any of you all have seen the price of fencing lately, and that 2 feet really makes a huge financial impact. So, just so you're aware, as we're thinking about this, because it is all of the parties involved. This is a very unique and pleasantly unique situation because literally every party involved on all sides of this are all ours. And everybody, we want to make every single person happy for different reasons, but all related to the community. So,
I mean, I think we could work together to figure out whether it's 6 feet or 8 feet. That when we can consult with the fence company and really take a look at it to come up with a plan that works. And I think in some areas the topography's different. The one fence goes up a hill, but ultimately we want the fence to work. But I don't think we need to get hung up on whether it needs to be 6 feet or 8 feet. Ultimately, we can make it work.
Yeah, or like what, so Jerry just said, what if we basically lifted up a 6-foot fence 2 feet so it'd be open on the bottom, and then it would just have that. It is, but it would be open at the bottom, so then for snow removal and stuff like that.
It
I
would still
don't know if that
require-
changes the engineering need.
It's not
And
going to change.
two, I was just thinking about the whole thing about the fence and about having a gate or a removables thing, because, every place I've ever seen that has a fence around it gets damaged or destroyed every winter.
Yep.
So, getting rid of that snow is an important factor to consider with that.
Well, there's also enough room, so it's 20 feet in between the road and the fence, and then it looks like there's probably roughly almost 20 feet in between the fence and the other fence for the garden. So, I mean, what's to say that they just try and move it another 5 or 10 feet? Because the closer the fence, stockade fence is, the only thing is at some point the bottom part of the food forest might be shaded. I mean, that would also be a concern, I guess.
I'm just gonna, talk about the fence and the snow removal. Is you're talking about the area on the back side of the police driveway where it turns the corner, and talking whether to put a fence there or a removable fence there. At that point, the fence was more to corral people from going across there. Is as James pointed out earlier, we can do a lot of that pedestrian traffic control with bollards and chains and not a solid fence. So there is no need for a fence on that end, anyways. So
Right.
So that way that would eliminate that. The only other thing I was going to say is about the fence is going from the 6-foot fence to the 8-foot fence does add quite a bit of cost to it, not only in the fencing cost but in the engineering cost. And as you just mentioned, that is maybe moving that fence up the hill closer to the community garden would effectively raise the height, that extra 2 feet, so that we wouldn't need that 8-foot fence through there. So.
Plus giving you more room for snow storage.
Yeah. So, Hannah, what's your thought on conditioning fence height?
Well, I would say technically you can put a specific height, although I would caution that partially just because there's been a lot of discussion on it, but also because it is still a relatively new decision. And kind of as James was saying, I think the best way forward is to leave the condition as, fencing as amenable to, all parties involved, something like that, so that there's a clear need for, what's the word? A decision between everyone, rather than specifically specifying the height.
So if we just said adequate fencing is provided in the areas shown, would that
That's
be
satisfactory to the police department and the applicant or the garden.
Okay.
But doesn't that
Yeah.
still
You could say-
leave a decision to be made?
Yeah, but not by us.
Okay.
And that is
Well, I don't want to
something
leave it
that
ambiguous either. That's, let's not leave it too open-ended.
Yeah, that's
Well,
That's my
I mean, it's
concern.
either a 6 or an 8-foot fence. It has to be there regardless.
Well, I would offer this as a compromise. If we're stuck on it.
I mean, if it's all
let's-
taxpayer money, I mean, maybe it should go to a vote. I mean, why are we the ones that
And then this
say?
thing's going to be delayed 2 years. So, but
I guess
I think
I
the
mean-
reality that this is a very simple solution is let's get an 8-foot stake and a 6-foot stake. Let's go drive them in the ground at the proposed level we're talking about if we're going to go up that hill, and let's get a visual look at it. And if a 6-foot fence moved a few feet back, a few feet up the hill is going to provide adequate screening, and the police are in agreement then we move forward. And if it doesn't, then we condition it for an 8-foot fence, and we can put it to bed.
I don't know. It's 160 something feet long, at 2 feet tall. I mean, that's a significant cost of infrastructure for that. So,
Chief, could I ask you a question, please?
hold on.
My question would be, how important is an 8-foot fence after the conversation that we've had, knowing that, it's a significant additional cost to the taxpayers? How important really is it to have an 8-foot fence versus a 6-foot fence?
Willing to work with anybody. This used to be the police department, so if you think of what we're willing to work with, we talked about a 6-foot fence because of where Dennis and I were looking at the way the grade came down. We had put the fence at the bottom of the grade. I guess if you move it up 2 feet, it's going to theoretically raise the height of the fence. So, I mean, a 6-foot fence might be adequate. It's just the positioning of it.
Okay.
If you say that I only have a 6-foot fence, then I only have a 6-foot fence. You're not going to see me.
Well, I'm asking because I want, obviously, I want to do what you guys need without, killing the project or without, really, breaking the budget. Would you be okay if we made a motion like we would approve the 6-foot fence and location to be determined? Would that be more, then you guys could adjust it, or we could do the stake thing, and
That's your decision, I guess.
Well, I'm just trying to get your take on it,
I mean, looking at it, what you just said, that leaves speculation as to that fence could now come closer to the police department, and I'm losing snow storage space. If you leave that where it's going to be up to...
Well, hold on, Irish.
Can I interject?
Yes.
Is this, if the police chief and the community garden people are comfortable with this, and I ask you all to pay attention to this, would you all be comfortable with the board conditioning a fence of height and location to be agreed upon prior to installation with confirmation to the code office? So you two work out the height, do the stake thing, and then before a fence gets put in, you guys provide me with something signed by all of you that you've examined this, done the stake test, and this is what you're going to do for a height or location? Is that something that would be kind of a compromise?
Yep.
Would you guys be amenable to that? It would have to be, it would be contingent upon the parties being amenable, because if they
Right,
do go
because
with a
that way,
6-foot
if you guys
fence-
wanted it closer to the garden, it could happen, as long as it's, as long as everyone's okay with that, and then it just goes through Irish.
And that would
Mr. Chair.
prevent the risk of it being moved closer to your department, but it would have
I'm
to
not
be
concerned
amenable
about
to.
that. It's
No,
just
I
if we
know.
leave it up to, let's make a decision.
Let's not leave it
I guess.
open-ended. I
Let's-
understand
let's
what you're
make a
saying,
decision.
but for a 6-foot fence, because a permit's not required, it would be up to the applicant to be amenable to reporting to me prior to installing a 6-foot fence, because I don't permit those, they're not required. Is that
I just
something
think that,
the party-
I think, in my opinion, I'm going to say, I
Absolutely.
feel like that would be poor form on our part, because as public servants, how hard are they going to push back against, the town? They're going to, and you've been very agreeable. You've told us what your needs are. He's expressed his needs. I think if we can meet his needs, we should. And I think a good compromise would look like we go down there on an afternoon, we drive in a 6-foot stake, and we drive in an 8-foot stake, and we set it at the proposed area, and a representative from the community garden, a representative from the police department, and a few representatives from us say, yeah, that's what right looks like, and that's the condition. It's
I have
not easy.
I think that's a too tall of an ask, because if it was any other situation, if it was at a residency,
We would just condition it, and we'd make them eat the cost.
we would just say put up a fence, and we don't. The only times that we've had issues is, let's say a pickleball court comes in and someone wants sound deadening. That's the compromise that we've had. We haven't asked, no one has asked for a taller fence.
Actually, one of our select board members asked for a fence to an adjoining property
Yep.
that adjoined his, so
And
it wasn't an unreasonable ask.
They compromised the planning board didn't do anything for that. They compromised with the contractors, That was not us saying, you have to put a fence in. They agreed outside of the planning board meeting to what was okay and what wasn't. I mean,
Right.
Chairman, do we know if a
My-
fence
my-
company has been consulted, I'm sorry, Les, on this fence? Has a fence company been consulted, or,
Yeah, yes.
okay, thank you.
We have a estimate on a 6-foot fence, 332 feet long, with a 4-foot removable gate of our choice somewhere along that, more of a fire escape type issue.
Chief, did they express whether they thought that would give you ample privacy
This
for what
was
you were
literally
looking for?
quickly, this happened between Tuesday and this evening. It's the company that we used, the fencing that currently is at the police department. They did send us an estimate, so they gave us what we asked for, and at the time it was 6-foot fence. Again,
So and another piece of this, not to interrupt, but, you know, this is a very short-fused response on them, because we've put them in an awkward spot where they were not privy to the plans from the get-go, and now they're having to scramble, and we're kind of putting them in the hot seat, right? I mean, the fence issue has only come up. When did the fence issue come up? Like this week?
They were notified with the fire department and everybody else. Terry notifies everybody.
Okay.
Everybody gets the packet at the beginning. The fence issue was brought up recently. I'm not sure why that was brought up recently, but the packet went out to everybody. They got it at the same time you guys did.
Mhm.
So it's,
And that seemed what the compromise was,
Yes.
is to put up a stockade fence to
Yes.
to have
And
some
I don't,
privacy.
just to respond to what you said, the idea of putting a 6-foot stake and an 8-foot stake and us making a decision on that, I think is beyond our scope. I would not.
I would
be-
agree with that.
Fair.
I would not be involved with that.
I will go on record saying I have expressed my concerns from the very first time that I heard about this.
Yep.
So don't misunderstand that this just didn't pop up in the last week. I've been
Right,
expressing my
right.
concerns
Yep.
from the very
In
beginning.
your letter.
Yeah,
We're
and-
just now getting to them being addressed.
And if
I
I may,
acknowledge that, Chief. I was just stating that you weren't unaware of the project until Monday.
No,
This
I'm
is
aware as the
yeah.
first day that I
So
was notified.
I was just
I-
making
Sure.
that clear that to the
Yep.
board that you guys get notified the same as they do at the beginning. So
going back to the chief's original comment at the beginning of his words, he was asked, would you prefer a 6 or 8 foot fence? And he said an 8-foot fence is optimal, meaning what he really would like. So, I'm kind of comfortable giving him what he wants.
I would be there as well.
See, I'm on the other side of the fence.
I know.
Literally and figuratively.
I just think of it as a
And
cost thing. I mean, it costs taxpayer money to put this fence up. I mean,
My question is it in our purview to even make that stipulation?
The height?
Hannah? Yeah. Is that in our ability to even stipulate a 6 or an 8-foot fence?
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
Oh,
It's a condition.
it is in your ability to impose conditions that you deem necessary, but the question then comes down to whether or not you can tie it to a specific need. And in this case, the need is the safety concerns that were expressed by the chief. But is there a tangible reason as to why 8 is better than 6? I don't know. Is there potentially the compromise of moving it up the hill and then still using a 6-foot fence and saving thousands of dollars or however much the fence costs? Maybe. So I guess the question is, yes, you can, but is it justifiable? Does that answer the question?
I am.
No, but thanks.
I am stuck squarely in. I would love the height to be at the 8-foot point, but I'm okay with the 6-foot fence 2 feet up the hill, creating the 8-foot point to save money.
Right.
If
Or
that
what
could
if-
be somehow kind of
or
put
what
in,
if the ground swaled? You know, so it has a berm and then it's 6 feet.
Yeah.
You know, it's still
I-
doing the same
Right.
thing.
I'm not hung up on it has to be 8 feet of wood fence.
Right.
I'm hung up on I want that level
Of privacy.
of privacy.
And I
May.
agree, Rick. I think that's where we're coming out here is 8 feet is better than 6 feet for the issues that the chief stated. So therefore, how we get there is really not us, but it's it needs to be worked out to their satisfaction.
So we would ask them if they're amenable to looking at moving their fence back to achieve the 8-foot
Sure.
elevation.
Yeah.
I think that's a reasonable stipulation to say, make every, I mean, I know these people personally, and I know that, they're honest, honorable people, and I think if we said to them, make every possible effort to move this up the hill as far as you can without blocking the sunlight to the food garden, to get that fence as high as possible, I think that's a healthy compromise.
I mean, it's going to require Dennis to go move like 30 stakes 2 feet up the hill.
He enjoys it.
Now, Dennis, was that?
I'd like to speak to the idea of moving the fence.
Absolutely.
So the fence parallel to the, this fence right here parallel.
Correct.
Yes, you got to speak in the mic. They're gonna yell
You
at
can
us.
pick it up if you
Yeah.
like.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can take it with
We
you.
know which one you're talking about.
Okay, so that stockade fence that parallels the driveway.
Yep.
I don't think there's 2 feet of elevation gain between that fence and the fence of the garden. So you'd have to move it up inside the garden, and that's
Before
not
that.
going to work.
Right.
Okay? So a thought that occurs to me is that keep it in its present position and bring in fill and lift it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like berm it or
Put a berm underneath it and lift it up.
Yeah.
Case closed.
I mean, that would cost significantly less than adding another 2 feet by, what would you say, 300 feet long?
It's
Estimate for 300
Yeah, if you guys speak, in front of the mic. I'm sorry. I'm just preventing getting yelled at.
We're looking to get microphones out here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then we
Can I just
No,
say
no, no,
too
don't do
that
that.
we'll be taking they'll be taking soil out to make the new parking lot.
Storage
Thank you. That's
Right,
the
so
word. The
that could
parking
get
lot,
moved
which could
down.
be used
Fill
to
could
make
be
the
a
berm.
balanced site.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
332 feet of 6-foot fence came in at $14,605. An additional $550 if we wanted the 4-foot gate.
Okay.
So you're at,
15,000.
correct,
Yeah.
15,105. That's at 6 feet.
That's at 6 feet. Yeah.
I'll get you a copy of this too. I just got it tonight.
So, let me just ask the overall plan, like I noticed that site has a good slope to it. And I know that at the top, you talked about making a cut there to make a level area. Is that gonna be like terraced, or is it gonna be a lot of it leveled out, or
No,
just that particular
it's
area?
mostly just that one corner to be able to, lower that corner so it's not up above the rest of the garden, and also to allow a space to move material around that corner to where we'll store the wood chips and the compost.
Okay.
Okay? And there, but going back to where the Sally driveway turns and goes into the garage and preventing people from coming off that walkway, the idea of the chain thing, that's one approach, and I think Phil brought up the idea of a vegetative thing. And if we do that back close to the driveway, the vegetative approach won't impact snow removal because it's, 20 feet or more, So that's another solution to that moving, and that walkway is 5 feet right now.
It's 5 feet wide.
It's 5 feet wide right now. So it's adequate for people with mobility issues right now. All garden equipment will already be in the garden, wheelbarrows and everything. Our plan is to provide those big pieces of equipment to everybody. They don't need to bring things. They don't need to even bring shovels. They'll have shovels and rakes on site. All they have to do is come with their gardening gloves and their lunch and some water or whatever they want, you know? It's not a bunch of equipment coming in with them.
Okay.
I like the idea of the berm, lifting a 6-foot section of fence.
I mean, even if it only lifted it a foot, and we ended up with a 7-foot fence, I think that, you know,
Not
that
another
is closer to what is optimal.
Yeah.
What's that?
Not another number we got to fight about.
Yeah.
7 feet.
Well, I think I would be, you know, amenable. I mean, I would be okay
Right.
with just.
It would have to be basically be swaled, so the water runoff would still be going to where the water needs to go.
So that could easily be addressed.
Right.
You know, that's
Right.
like, you know, put a pipe down, let the water run through. You know,
Right, and then
you know,
just
it's not
divert it into
not
the...
a big deal.
Yeah. Okay. And you guys would be amenable to adding that berm?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
It's kind of cool. We haven't talked about the garden at all. Garden's great.
All right. All right.
So are we looking for a motion?
Yes.
I will make a motion that we find the application complete. No?
We approve it.
Approve the application with the condition that the fence is amended with a berm for the 8-foot visual
Okay.
height. And are you also amenable to the vegetative barrier along the walkway as discussed as a condition, sir?
Yes. So, you know, do you have any guidance on what you want to see?
You're
that
the plant
vegetative?
guy.
You're the plant
Okay.
guy.
I was thinking
Just
more
not something
like,
that's invasive and going to create
Okay.
all kinds of issues.
Something that would obstruct people from just turning and walking.
Crown of thorns. Crown of thorns.
okay.
A hedge.
A hedge would be
think,
fine.
Think a hedge, yes.
Okay.
Crown of thorns.
So I would make a motion that we approve the project with the understanding that we will come up with an 8-foot fence solution and a vegetative barrier between the walkway and the police
Can
department.
I just ask for clarification? Is that
Yes.
a berm for the entire length of the whole entire fence? Or we-
My understanding, it was for the 101-foot section
Directly-
parallel to
directly behind the
That's
fence
what we're
area.
talking about
Yes.
then?
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Are we clear on that now? I'll second the motion.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Let it grow.
All right.
We beat the hell out of that horse.
Hey, we got there.
20-minute recess.
I know.
We'll be right back. We're running over to our corner post to get us all something.
All right, so moving on is the land use ordinance amendments. So,
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief.
yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Did that say it?
I like you guys, but not that much.
Dude, I don't blame you. Put me in your pocket. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night, Emery.
Good night, guys.
Good night, Dennis. Thank you.
Good night, Ed.
Take care.
Have a good night. Good night.
Yeah.
So, quick question for Terry, possibly Irish. The top from Lisa Chase, is that about the spot with the, right after it, about the signs?
No, those are two separate things.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out what, it just says the purpose of this ordinance suggestion would be to regulate and control the placement of signs.
That's the content of her email. Yeah, this, I just cut and pasted onto a single sheet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Well,
all it
what's
said.
what's the suggestion? That's
to
right.
regulate and
Follows.
control the placement of signs on
Placement.
utility poles within the town.
I believe she's referring to things like, plowing call 775.
Yeah, garage sale signs.
Sorry,
that-
8675309, right? That's the number.
Well, I mean, anyone
Yeah.
can put, on an easement, anyone can put signs anywhere. I mean, that's,
Fun fact, technically it's illegal to attach anything to a telephone pole.
To a utility
Right.
pole, but
Yeah.
a freestanding sign, I think.
right, but I'm just saying as for
But this is
easements,
for
let's
utility.
say you, on your lawn, right next to the road, you could say, vote for this.
Yeah. Well, some towns have ordinances that address that, but she's only addressing utility poles anyway in her.
So around town, I've seen the problem.
Oh,
I've
yard
seen
sales
the solar signs
Oh, okay.
and the
All right.
tree
Oh, that's-
guys
yeah.
and the whatever it is.
Or they sometimes the yard sale signs
Yep.
stay there long after.
Yep, and somebody will
they-
break half the sign off and it still stays there. It just looks like
Yeah.
Like they got a telephone pole for sale? Because it just says
Yeah.
sale?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish there were nothing on the telephone poles except wires.
Did you say it was illegal to put anything on the utility pole?
Technically,
CMP
no.
says no. Yes, they said nothing on their poles.
Okay.
Technically, it's illegal. So I could, if authorized by certain town managers in the room, go around and just rip all of them off and throw them in the dumpsters.
Or final.
AT&T? No.
I mean, that's ju-
technically,
it-
So
technically, I cannot find people. I fee them,
Right.
Yes.
And
but I could provide
So an
them with
ordinance
how she
for
says
an
it is,
officer?
this would prohibit the business signs on utility poles within
so
our
like
town.
the tree guys or the solar companies or those
So she's-
types of things.
But I think
But then you're saying
gonna-
it's okay for yard sales and others.
I'm telling you straight up, it's illegal to
CMP
put
says
anything on
no
there.
to all.
Right.
So that's already a law.
So we don't
Is that what
need-
you're
So-
saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
We don't need an ordinance, we just need enforcement.
Yeah.
Like code enforcement.
Yeah, I know. I got nothing to do these days. I should just jump right on.
Well, that's when you just call the police and have them tear it
Have the
down.
police
Yeah,
department.
technically it's
Yeah.
illegal,
Right.
not against code.
Right. Exactly.
Thank you, Mike.
All right.
So yes, I can start ripping them down if you'd like. And I will do the service of calling the companies that put them up and giving them the option to get their signs back. But,
if you need help ripping them down, let me know.
all right, I'm going to call you on that because I will
Absolutely.
tell you,
See
in one
them
of the
ground,
municipalities I worked for,
Just have
they
that.
had my old boss, one of the municipalities. He used to love rolling around and ripping them signs off, and he was duking it out with one guy who owned his own little yard cleaning company. And the dude must have had a cherry picker because the last sign none of us could get to. It was like 20 feet up the pole.
I got a 40-foot ladder.
It wasn't even like a point. I don't even know what the point was because you never noticed it there. So.
So, moving forwards onto what Les is reading from Code Enforcement Office to bring the LUO in line with the approval we just received from the town attorney. I propose that we add the following under 7.13.f4. Off-premise signs shall be restricted to Maine DOT official business directional signs and must comply with all MDOT official business directional sign rules and regulations.
Okay.
I just have one stipulation on that.
Which is?
Farms.
What about them?
Seasonal times, farms put up corn signs or other things,
This
and they
is
have
not the
directional.
same.
Okay, all right.
This is
that's
not that.
that-
What this
just making
pertains
sure.
to
Those
is
little,
yeah, you
like
know
the
the
Dick's Fix It.
Dick's Fix It shop has one.
Yeah.
The DOT has
Yeah,
these signs.
Cranberry Meadow Road.
We ran into an issue because a home occupancy here in town wanted to have a directional sign because his business is suffering because of his location. He wanted the directional signs off the main routes. We do not regulate that. That's through Maine DOT. However, our ordinance did not allow for that.
Our current sign ordinance?
Our current sign ordinance does not allow for that, clearly allow for that. So we did receive some guidance from the town attorney that we could technically on a, this part of it's gray enough, we can do that thing, but
Yeah,
we don't
so-
want to be doing it on we can do that on a gray area thing when it's as simple as just plopping this in there and saying
Okay.
that they can legally have these signs.
Yeah, they just
But
have
it
to go
also-
through MDOT to do that.
They have to go through
Yes.
It
MDOT.
wouldn't
There's an
be-
application
Now, does-
process. They have to fill out the application. I have to sign it before DOT will even consider it. Then they order the sign through DOT's specific authorized vendors with their specific authorized criteria. They also have to renew them every year because the DOT does remove signs if they're not maintaining the fees for them. That's how they keep us from having 700 small business signs. We're just trying to make it so that our home occupancies that are needing to have people directed to them have
Can
a
do it.
fighting chance here in town.
Yeah.
So,
Seems like a no-brainer.
Well, all businesses, right?
yeah, but this is for.
Well, that I understand what the
Yeah.
impetus was.
This is under home
Please.
occupancy.
No, yeah.
Yeah, go for it, James. Sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to emphasize, like, for like farms, for off-premise signs, we probably should specifically enumerate that in our ordinance,
Yes.
along with a whole host of things that, like, to be more agriculturally friendly.
Yes.
So there's a farm study done by Thatcher Carter from Maine Farmland Trust. There's a big effort in town for open space preservation and farmland preservation. There's actually a committee, open space planning group and comprehensive planning. It's all kind of meshing together. And the farmland report has a bunch of suggestions, so that'd be in line with one of those. So
Okay.
something to probably.
Yeah, my thought was I just wouldn't want to restrict someone to that has like a temporary farm stand to say, hey, we're over here. And then-
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I don't want to do that either because, quite frankly, that farm fresh corn just hits home. You know, this is just so our home businesses, because our actual signage for commercial businesses allows for a whole lot more. A home occupancy, and most home occupancies, they're not having a lot of foot traffic, but some of these places are harder to find, and we want to give them a fair chance.
Okay. All right. So with the next part, Dan and Karen Cruchot, looks like they're asking about industrial building, large scale businesses from moving into residentially zoned areas. So a large scale business can't go in a residential area unless it's in the RCI zone, and that's residential, commercial, industrial zone. That would have to be a rezoning issue. I don't think that would really be. I mean, we would need more information on just that.
If I'm not mistaken, and I am staring at the person who can tell me if I am mistaken, the complaint from this is in regards to one particular business that is technically a home occupancy that is basically operated out of a residential area. The trucks are stored there but they're used off-site, but they're stored local, I believe. Is that the... Get back up to that microphone.
Yeah,
Just bring it back
that's
to this
accurate.
area.
So it's off, it's off one of the not major corridors, but pretty close to one of the. Oh, that's off Old Stamford Road. I'll just be specific.
Yeah.
And it's just something that went through code a couple years ago that we have nothing against. That would be specifically against it. So yeah, it's their business. They store them at their home. They don't operate out of there, obviously, but it's the kind of their starting base, and it's disruptive towards the neighbors. They live directly across from it. So they have the equipment that starts up, and then they go about their day.
That predates me, so I had to get the historical
So
background from
I'm
James.
just trying to think at that point. So you would want to limit machinery at a residential area. I mean, is that essentially what they're trying to say? I
Does that
mean,
seem like an adequate representation
Do we
of
have
what
the
this
letter?
family is looking for?
we don't.
She references a letter, but there's no letter.
Yeah,
The letter went to the select board a few years back.
I can probably, I probably have those emails in my email just so you have the whole context of it,
Right.
because it would be a
But
good
I mean,
case
if
study
it's
to
a home
understand.
occupancy, I mean, as long as they don't have more than one employee or no employees, it's
I'm not sure what the actual deal with that one is, but it appears to be, from what I understand from my conversations with James, just basically home base. They just start there and leave.
I think if and I can locate that letter, the original letter, I believe that they're unhappy with the expansion since they moved in. Like, it's like a lot of things. It's just naturally
I mean,
grown over
sprawling.
time.
it happens.
Yeah.
Sorry.
exactly.
Jerry, you have a question for me?
Thinking
I
back.
guess
Jerry's trying to ask me a question.
That's
Hold
right.
on.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Les.
No, Les, go ahead.
you said
Somebody-
something about one employee.
Well, in
No,
a
he
home
said one
in a
employee.
home occupancy, it's limited to how many employees you can have at your residence, right?
If you're operating there.
Right. Well, a home occ, you are operating at your house.
Well, so I'm just, for clarity, because, I own a roofing company and a construction company. I don't run it out of my home just because I don't want those people at my house.
Right.
Nice.
But if you did, you would be limited to how many employees you can have.
I don't think so.
Oh, yes. It's in the ordinance.
For a home occupation.
Yeah,
But it's different. I think it's different. Like when, somebody came before us and they said, he operates in his home.
He's
That was the
operating.
trailer company.
You're thinking the difference
Right.
between in the home with what Brian's trailer was doing versus out of the home, which is what this
That's a
company
different
is doing.
license.
Different
though.
license.
Right,
That's-
and they're talking about, if I think I know who they're talking about, they don't operate out of it. Like,
So
they
it's
don't
not a home occ. It's just that's like what James said.
It's the
that's-
machinery.
park
That's where
trucks
they're
there,
parking all their
park
stuff.
equipment there. They go off and do jobs someplace else.
So I could agree with that because if it's a residential area, you shouldn't be having commercial stuff unless it's your place of business.
Yes,
Our
Jerry.
ordinance says, and I think this is probably where this has come from, nothing before 7. I'm sure this is all going on before 7. And the ways
no,
and
the
everything.
report was
could be.
just the number of them. It wasn't about the time.
Just
It's
about the
number
volume.
of them.
The time of the day is 7 o'clock.
I'd like to see the letter just to have it.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
would too.
All right. Well,
Well, we'll
we'll
move
revisit
on.
this. We'll
Yeah.
revisit with the letter. How's that?
Yeah, I wrote myself a note to find that original letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on for campgrounds and tenting grounds. I've read through this. The one.
It's only number 5 that was the change. It's the light one.
Yes.
Yes.
Because they're not in color. It was in color when I wrote it. But
Yeah. I read it through the email and I saw the. There's one thing.
So 5 and 6 is also new. I
Yeah,
believe.
5 and 6 are the new items that I'd like to see added.
In 8.1 or 8?
Yeah, 8.1. So it
Yeah.
would be 8.1.A, point 5, and
And point
point
6.
6.
Okay, so I have, this is about number 2. Campsites shall be laid out and screened in such a manner that none are within view from public roads, navigable rivers, existing residences, or approved subdivision lots. Any combination of evergreen planting, landscaped, earthen berms, or solid fencing may be used to achieve the screening standard. My thought is navigable rivers. Most campsites, especially in central northern Maine, you can see tenting areas, and you can tent right on the river.
I didn't write
I know,
that
I know,
part,
but we're at a point
and
where we
I'm
can
with
change
you.
this.
I'm with you on that.
I almost
100%.
think we should strike that out.
I would
The whole number
agree with
2?
that.
No,
No,
just the
navigable
navigable
river
rivers.
piece.
Okay.
I think
I agree.
having that ability to be able to tent next to a river,
Is
even if
amazing.
someone sees you while they're canoeing, should be okay.
When they say navigable, are they talking about a major?
No, they're talking.
Well, just like
they're
if
talking
you're
about a river
canoeing,
where you
Any-
can
yeah,
canoe
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
or
got
boat,
it.
or okay. So
So
we are
strike navigable rivers.
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah,
Okay.
me too.
Other than that, I had no issues.
Yep.
I can eat lobster on a navigable river in Portsmouth.
So we're striking that whole paragraph?
No,
No,
just
just the
the
navigable
navigable
rivers.
piece.
Navigable
Yeah.
river.
Crazy.
Yep, that's it.
So 5 and 6 are what we.
So basically, you're
Okay.
still making it screened from the road, from the neighbors,
Just not from the river.
just not from a river.
That makes sense to
Yeah.
me, but I wasn't. That wasn't the.
Well, I
the
also
hoe I
think
had to-
about it.
the row
Let's
I
say
had to
like
hoe.
the that we just approved for
Beaver Dam.
Beaver Dam
Yes.
campground. They're right up on the river,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see them. What's to say if someone else wanted to put another campsite further up?
Yep.
We'd
there's
have to
also
say, well, you can't do that now.
There's also residences that can see.
Well, that's
Into
that, yeah, that's fine. You just can't see everything else.
So I just requested the addition of, or the consideration of the addition of numbers 5 and 6.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions for me on those 2 items?
Does Does 5 talk about two different things? Recreational vehicles and tent sites not within the boundaries of an approved campground shall be restricted to use between April 1st and October 31st. And then it goes on to talk about RVs being hooked up to potable water and septic, but
So-
not during those time periods.
What that means is that if you want to have your family come stay in your RV at your property, that RV is required actually under the subsurface and the drinking water regulations to be hooked up to potable water and septic, but it's not called out in our ordinance. Put it in there just because it's typical to put it in there when you put in the other pieces. What I'm looking for is a very specific start and stop dates to prevent people from living in RVs year-round in somebody's yard, because an RV is not, by definition, it is not intended for year-round use in somebody's yard.
So the potable water and septic are irrelevant
part
if
of
you're
it.
outside of those dates.
So let me ask you two
Because
questions.
of those
'Cause you're not
dates, they
supposed to
should
be using
be
it.
closed
Yeah,
down.
Terry?
So why do we say or shall be able to be emptied periodically? Shouldn't it be?
No, it just says and shall either have.
But
Or shall,
isn't
yes.
it?
Or
right.
shall be able to.
So it needs
I'm
the
asking
connection or
why
it needs to be.
Do we
If
not
they-
just require a hookup to a septic?
Because now, something I do have experience with here, if you have an RV at, say, you're out on Diamond Hill Road, you own property out on Diamond Hill, or we're going to go camp at Rick's place out on Alley Pond.
Bring it up.
He has a septic system, so there is an ability to hook a RV into an existing subsurface system. However, when you're closer to town and you're on town water and sewer, you don't have that ability to just dump in there. So then you need to be able to have
Right.
it.
Or
Okay,
you're
so
just
my-
in a lot that has no septic or well.
Or you can't get to the septic without driving over the leach field and causing damage. So it
Right.
needs to be, we need to specify that they need to be taken, either have a honey wagon to it, or preferably, because it's an RV, it should still be in a drivable condition.
But
Be able to
someone,
take it.
according to this, someone can have an RV parked in their driveway from the date continuous from April 1st to October 31st. And, okay.
So my question is this limiting when people can tent at their house?
No.
Because it
Uh,
just
well-
says
And tent sites.
not
Yeah, it
within
should-
the
it should be
boundaries of.
tenting. Honestly, part of that is you would think people would not be tenting all through the winter anyways.
We do.
Yeah,
Big
but you
Scouts.
never know.
We do every month.
Right.
I have one
right.
planned this month.
Today
today?
today has been a day for me to double hockey sticks.
So,
Just
So this is just basically talking about campsites. This isn't talking about.
this isn't talking about the RV parks. This is talking about at home, what people. Basically, we're
Well, it's campgrounds and tenting grounds.
Yes.
So you need to have the 10 acres, right, for it to be classified as a campground or the tent grounds.
but it's as an RV thing. Where else are we going to?
Right. Well, I'm not talking about
Yeah.
the RV. I'm just talking
But
about
I'm
the
saying-
tenting.
shouldn't
Yeah.
we just strike out the tent part, maybe?
If you guys are comfortable
So
removing the tent part, that's
My only
Well,
question
or
would be,
or
are
make it a
we,
separate paragraph.
if we put this as an ordinance, is this precluding somebody, and I would say, let's say somebody has a developable lot, right? And they've punched their well, they've punched their septic, and they're a home builder, they're building their own home, and they park a four-season RV on their property, and they have it properly winterized. Are we saying that during those months, they can't live in their RV while they're building their home? Is that what we're saying?
if you're saying properly winterized, that means no, they can't live in it, because when you winterize it, you put antifreeze into the
Well,
water.
no, there are
If you
four-season
mean
campers that you
weatherized.
can
Insulate.
Weatherized? Okay, just
insulate
making
with
sure
lug
we're
cords.
following where
That's
you're
what I
going.
meant.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, technically, camp RVs are a secondary use. So technically, officially, legally, under the code, they can't do that anyways, because you cannot have a secondary use on a lot with no primary use.
Really?
Yes,
So you cannot buy a plot.
Is that a
of
town
land.
or a state thing?
that's code state. Town is ordinances. When I say code, I'm talking state level regulations, ordinances. And that comes from a couple of
That's
different
illegal
departments.
to do?
You're not supposed to do it.
You're not supposed to do it.
You're not supposed to do it.
You're not
Now,
supposed to do it.
do we push the issue? No, that's not where I'm going with this.
Okay.
This is more for the people that are trying to create. You know, the code allows me, as I call it the a-hole rule, the authority having jurisdiction, to allow things that are, you know, provided I can be sure that they're safe.
Reasonable. Yeah.
Yes, that I can make reasonable changes. What we're trying to prevent here are the people that are creating, in essence, a illegal campground on their property with taking in every Tom, Dick, and Harry that might have an RV, an old broken down RV they can drag in, will never move again.
Right. Okay.
And this gives me more teeth because it gives them the summer season, which is when you would typically have your family and friends up. And honestly, this type of thing is something that is, I mean, if you have an RV and you have it hooked up and it's reasonably weatherized and your family's coming up for Christmas and they're going to stay for the week from Christmas to New Year's, you set that up, odds are good your neighbors are not going to call me because you happen to have out-of-town guests crashing in your RV.
Yeah. Got it.
However,
Got it.
you move somebody in and they're living there, and 6 months later they're still coming and going. Somebody's going to call me. This gives me the teeth to make sure that you're not impacting your neighbors negatively.
Got
But
it.
according to this, someone can live there for 6 months.
Yeah, but I mean,
Okay.
in the winter.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I
that
just
would,
wanted- I
that,
just
that
wanted
would be
to
the
clarify.
short term.
Yeah, it becomes a short. It just puts the teeth behind the RV being
Seasonal.
a recreational
Yeah, it's a
vehicle,
seasonal
not
vehicle.
a living
Yeah. Okay.
situation.
All right.
And if you guys want to remove the tents, I mean, hey, if
No,
y'all are
because
crazy
I
enough
read
to-
further and it says tenting ground.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as long as it's not restricting a personal, like, if you want to tent out, like Rick said, once a month, you should be able to. And
It's
as long
just
as we're not trying to
creating
restrict that.
I'm just trying to
Yeah,
prevent the
we got a good
creation
guess
because
for
we
it,
are
so.
starting to see that here, unfortunately,
Okay.
where we're getting some people that are creating some very, and it's a risk to them, the neighbors, as far as sanitation, if they're not able to remediate the waste, remove the waste.
So by weatherization, you're meaning remove the waste.
The whole,
When you winterize an RV,
Yeah.
you not only pump out the waste,
Right.
you also
Drain
they
the water. And, yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be winterized.
like you would do a boat or anything else.
Yep. And it's just to,
And we want to make that a rule, do we?
just like every other municipality I've worked in, yeah, it'd be nice to have the teeth behind it.
Okay, so parking and circulation, there was no changes. That was part B. Health and safety, there is, and this is still for campgrounds and tented grounds.
Yes.
So the striking out of picnic table and, so basically they just need a trash receptacle and a possible, further down, it talks about the.
And
Yeah,
adds
and-
the dumpsters being in a fenced enclosure for all campers.
Okay.
But I'm going to be honest, that's just my petty Betty side, is the reality is with most of these people in RV parks, they're not going to have picnic tables out there. I don't feel like that's something we should be requiring. That's something that's an amenity that should be, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone have any concerns
I don't want to
about
have
that?
to enforce that, oh my God, you don't have a picnic table out here.
Right. I mean, if they want to put one there, they can.
Yeah,
Just
they
make it
won't
an option and
it
not-
won't prohibit it. It
Right.
just means that I don't have to go checking and making sure
Yeah.
that everybody's got a gosh darn picnic table sitting
Yeah.
outside their door. Especially since a lot of these people will have just their camp chairs and a little
Mm-hmm.
camp table and be much more comfortable than a picnic table.
It looks like number 4, you made changes to number 4.
Yeah, that was my next one. Is each campsite shall be provided with a masonry or metal fireplace provided in approved in writing by the fire chief.
I just put question marks by that because I wasn't sure if that was something that you guys wanted to look at or think of. And the only reason I did that is because I'm not sure, and I should have checked with the chief when I was talking to him earlier. I'm not sure if they are checking these things.
I know that a personal residence you
I've
can
had to
get
do that.
a fire pit approved.
Okay.
And they come in and inspect it, and then it's I can't remember the length of time, but I want to say it's like 2 or 3 years that it's approved for.
Okay. I just put question marks by it because when I did it, I just wanted to make it as easy as possible for you guys and put the whole ordinance
At this
in there.
point, it's a commercial thing. It's not just a home residence thing. So I would think that having approval with the fire department would be important.
Okay.
So can I ask, we're talking about a campground,
Yeah.
right? And a campsite within a campground,
Mhm.
and them having a place for a fire.
Yep. Should we say may instead of shall?
Yes, because there are lots of ways that you can have a fire
That's very true.
appropriately in a campsite,
Yeah.
at a campground.
Yeah.
Above, we do it in Scouts all the time, right? 55-gallon drum cut off with legs put on it, a hibachi. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can.
Solo stoves now.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think I just would be careful to limit it to simply a metal fireplace.
Right. Well, I think what this is just trying to say is that they would provide
An
fireplace.
area?
It does. Well, I mean, this just says it would provide masonry or metal fireplace. It doesn't say anywhere that you couldn't have a fire other
Elsewhere?
than that
Okay.
designated area.
So are we going to say may or shall?
May.
Yeah.
May.
Yeah. I'd agree
I
with
put
that.
the question marks on it because I've had to do a couple of, and I don't understand this, and I probably should have said this to you before I say it on camera, but I've had a couple of people that have had to call me for fireplace inspections because when they've called the fire department, they've been told that the fire department will not do that. So I've had to go in and do the NFPA and do the sign-off for them for
Okay.
their insurances. So I
Yeah.
put the question marks because
okay.
I wasn't sure
Okay.
if that's something our fire department even offers as a service, but you
Yeah.
answered that question.
Yeah. Well, I know for a residence they do.
Okay.
I've done that a couple
I
times now.
feel like if we change that word from shall to may, we're completely changing the whole thing.
Well, because if
Well,
we
they may be provided
Or
with
they
a
may be
masonry.
approved?
No,
no,
may
may be provided.
Right,
so that way
right.
they don't have to
They don't
provide a
have to.
fireplace.
Provide it,
So
but if
is
they
it-
do, it
But if
has
they
to be
do,
approved.
it has to be approved.
Right. Right.
Yep.
So if you do it, you have to get approval. If you don't do it, you don't.
No harm,
need
no
approval.
If they build masonry fireplaces or
Yep.
stone fireplaces,
Yep.
they
Or a
are
metal
getting
barrel.
approval
Correct.
before or after
Okay.
the fact.
How about this? Each campsite may be provided with a masonry or metal fireplace, which shall be approved in writing by the
That's
fire.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. That sounds good.
Thank you.
Clarification, because words matter.
All right.
true.
So now we're going down to a whole different thing with
Temporary
definitions, and that's temporary structure. Any structure that is used only temporarily for a maximum of XX days that is not permanently affixed to the ground or to any structure that is permanently affixed to the ground.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it into the definitions, and you guys can set the dates.
Right.
So
what-
we
what
talking
do
about
you-
like
Right.
portable storage
Yeah,
shelters?
what
Is
do you-
that-
what did you
is that
have
what
in
you're
Yeah,
talking
stuff
about?
like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Temporary, like, pods, people moving pods on, and because
Oh, yeah.
they are temporary for the next
Right.
3
and-
years.
Right.
You know,
right.
temporary should have a specific meaning
Yeah.
in my world.
So we need to
Temporary's
pick a
supposed to have
date
a-
So would
Number?
that include like a
Temporary
porta
storage.
potty sitting on?
No, porta potties are a little bit different because they are those are actually kind of regulated by the subsurface wastewater
Okay.
regulations, where they're required, where they're not allowed, that kind of thing. How long for durations
Construction
of events.
dumpsters.
Construction dumpsters I usually handle under my permitting and the permitting requirements. But it's more along the lines of things like storage trailers, or even depending on the length of time you guys choose or what you'd like to add to this, things like greenhouses. Temporary greenhouses that are up just for the summer purposes. Those are temporary. Why the hell are they coming to me for them? You know what I mean? So,
Well, that's a variable number then.
but if
Well-
you set a number, so let's say 6 weeks or 90 days. We could even go 3 months. I don't care.
Right,
So 90
right.
days. If you say 90 days, and you could put in this
Excluding agricultural use?
Yeah.
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 Because I think
excluding items
of
for
like
agricultural use.
right, because a temporary structure. Okay, I've raised pigs before, and we moved them.
Yeah.
So we have a temporary shelter for them, and we keep them for 6 months, and then we get rid of them.
And then they go to freezer camp.
Yes.
Same thing with broiler chickens.
Right, exactly. Same
So
with chicken
we
coops.
could I would be more than comfortable with an agricultural exemption.
Okay.
I just need something that gives me the teeth I need
Yeah.
so that these people that are stockpiling the trailer
Junk.
beds
Yeah.
and stuff for storage.
Okay.
Those are not being set right on property lines, which they are. And
Mhm.
because it's a temporary structure. Well,
So do
temporary
you
doesn't
feel
mean-
that 90 days would be?
I think it should be longer.
I think
You
it should be like
longer?
6 months.
I think
6
At
months?
least. I
Well,
think
If
6
we
months.
think about
sounds
the
right.
edges, construction trailer, for example, it's going to be there for a long time.
But that's
an
a-
But that's for
exception.
That's a
construction.
construction
Yeah.
trailer. That's a
Okay,
different thing.
that's not a temporary
that's
But there are
structure.
construction
that is
sites that
part of
have
the-
cargo containers full of
What, is that
storage
considered a
and
permanent
equipment and-
No.
Right.
But I look
Sit
at-
there for
but
a
I look
long
at like
time.
the guy who stores his boat under a shelter logic, right? Like you have a shelter logic in your backyard, you park your boat under it.
Right.
9
It's
months of the year.
Probably close to 9 months out of the year. I think 6 months is a
Well, I mean, some people
reasonable-
leave their boat in there year round and only
Right.
take it out a couple times a year.
Correct.
Right.
You know?
Correct.
But
But
at that point,
it
it's
turns
a-
to a
not-
shelter.
It's a
Permanently
permanent
affixed to the
structure
ground.
at
Right,
that point.
right.
You know, because if it's staying up for a year, it's
All right,
not,
so 180 days?
180 days seems reasonable, I think.
I think, because, I know my friend had a pipe burst
Mhm.
in his, one of his apartments,
Mhm.
and so he had a pod in his yard while he did renovations to the apartment.
I think that's very reasonable.
And again,
You guys
that,
think 180
but again,
days?
that comes into line with the,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can make
I- two
exceptions
storage
under,
containers sitting
for
for
things like
3-4
that
years,
fall under a
and they're not moving them.
construction heading.
And
Yeah.
But
Well,
this
storage
is
container
for,
is
this
different.
is
That's
for
not
the hoarder who
temporary
wants to
storage.
have
She
all
just
the
said that.
things, all the
Storage
things
containers.
ever.
That's
all
what she
of
said,
them.
storage container.
So you're saying a storage container is temporary storage?
Storage containers are supposed to be temporary.
Yeah.
They can apply for a building permit, put
Yes.
them on a pad, and make them a permanent structure.
Okay.
But if they're going to tell me that, no, I parked this directly on my property line and peed my neighbor off because it's a temporary structure that's been here for 2 years, that's not a temporary structure.
Now, what if
So-
you move it from one spot? I'm just trying to say,
Devil's
if it's
advocate,
if
yeah.
it's temporary, and you move it and you change the use of it,
You get a new 180 days.
right?
If
What
it's-
is you?
No, if it's a temporary structure, if it's a temporary thing that is brought onto your property at the end of that time period that you guys are going to set,
Okay.
then it needs to be removed, discontinued. So like,
Okay, but-
so you've got your greenhouse
that's
up for
different.
the summer.
Well,
You've
Now
got
we're
your
adding
greenhouse up for the
discontinue.
summer. You
Yeah.
take it down for the winter.
right.
Then you put it back up
Well-
in the summer, in the spring
Well,
again. Then
sometimes for a greenhouse, it's as easy as just removing the film off it. You know, because some of them, like I have a hoop house, and I only use it for a couple months, and it's just a film that goes on it. And when I'm done with it, I take the film off.
yeah, and when you take the film off, it's no longer a actual
Right.
usable space. It's
Right.
just a couple of friggin' poles in the ground
Yeah.
and
It's
nothing
a-
that the
it's a
snow is
jungle
going to
gym.
collect on. And yes, it's a birdie jungle gym.
Yeah.
It's nothing that the snow is
Okay.
going to collect on and crush you.
Now, what if someone had a trailer, like a truck trailer, and they take it off their property for a day after 179 days, and then puts it back on the next day after that? Would that reset that? I'm just asking.
No, because they didn't discontinue the use of it for any length of time. They
I don't
just
know that we
moved
can
it.
tell people to discontinue.
Well, this would be new, so anything that's there already is grandfathered in.
Yeah.
This would be new stuff coming in. So,
Also, the storage trailers are already defined and it's limited to 6 months. So it's already
6 months. Okay.
There's already
So,
precedent in there.
6 months is
Minus the ones that already have grandfathered in, because there's some storage trailers that
Right.
you can drive by and they've
They're
been
probably
there.
in violation.
They're in
Okay.
violation.
Okay.
They're in violation. So
Is it-
yes, Jerry.
There's 3 across the street from me that have been there for 4 years.
Mhm.
And I
There's-
asked, why are they still there?
there's-
And nobody would give that answer.
So
You
it
didn't
has no
ask me
teeth.
why, and I've got a lot of
Really?
those.
Yeah.
I've got a list of places that have them that are in
We'll
violation.
make the
But
law and it won't be enforced.
So
Let's
These
just-
only for
180
residential?
days. 180 days.
I think 180 days sounds reasonable.
180 days.
Yep.
Yep,
Okay.
180.
180. And signs. So, I know at the selectmen's meeting, there was an issue brought up about commercial signs on vehicles, lighted signs on vehicles.
Lighted?
Like
Look,
Domino's
man.
delivery.
Domino's delivery.
Do I look like the DOT?
No, but, so,
Chasing
my thought
back.
is this. If they're parked and they're not driving and they're over there, should the lights be off? And then when they go to deliver, the lights are on. Because no one downtown can have a lighted sign. But it's okay for a car to have a lighted sign?
Uber does it, Lyft does it.
Yeah.
Right, but only when they're operating.
Mr. Chair, you've got.
Okay.
You
Okay,
gotta start
Jared?
taking
To your
away.
point, Tuesday night, American Legion, Paul and I were here, parked in the town's parking lot. The Domino's car was over there, and I can't remember if the light was on or not, but it was in the parking spot over in our lot. Over
No,
there.
the light wasn't on.
Wasn't on, okay.
Yeah.
But that's what.
Well,
you're
they
talking
do have a
about.
parking issue that they're trying to work on now, and
Right.
I know that the selectmen and the people at Great Works Construction are and the tenants of that spot are trying to figure out a parking plan for that. But my concern is no one else can have a lit up sign. What's to say? Like, I get it when they're driving to and from. They want to advertise, and that's great. But if they're just sitting there idling or the car's off and they have their lights on, I mean, who's to say Bad Wolf Butcher doesn't do that on their cars now? And then who does that for Untrucked? And who does it for,
Who's going to enforce this?
Yeah.
well, that would be a
That's
code
enough.
enforcement at that point.
Yeah.
If-
I'll
She's
just.
not- she's
I'll
not-
This
just
does
change
say
it.
that all signs shall be
I'm not what?
externally
Right,
illuminated,
right.
so
Well-
maybe we need to just modify
Most
that
nights.
Yeah.
sentence.
Right. Well, in the land use ordinance, that is correct. All signs are
Citation
supposed to
under
be
the windshield
externally lit.
I'll have
Which-
to do some research
Okay.
on that because that might fall under
I
the.
think that's a DOT.
Yeah,
It says all signs must be stationary with no intermittent lights.
Right.
But I
They're not
don't know if they
stationary.
Right.
deem that an actual official sign under the. Let me
Right.
do a little research on that, Mr. Chair, and get back to you.
Okay.
Because that is a good
I
point.
just
you
brought it
bring
up because the
Um,
last selectmen's meeting or select board meeting I was at, it did get brought up.
Yeah, no, and it definitely warrants looking into. I just don't know, and I.
Because even like a taxi, most taxis,
They
their
shut it
lights
off
are
when they're not.
on when they're working.
Yes.
Like when they're traveling with passengers. If they're not traveling, if they're going to a place to pick someone up, the light's not on.
See, I just want to make sure that I'm not telling you to put something in an ordinance that we don't have the legal right to do.
Right,
So
right, and I
let me-
totally, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think actually the change I wanted to make, I think James doesn't want made, right?
So does Cumberland Farms gas prices lit up
I was going to.
Yeah.
constitute an illuminated
Okay,
sign?
skip, okay.
We're
this-
skipping C?
We're going to skip, we're going to ignore the whole C thing.
Okay.
Okay, we're not going to touch that. We're going to leave that alone. So,
Why?
because James told me to leave it alone.
Okay, now we're going on to F.
I'll tell you, just because the content of the signs is not regulated by this ordinance came right from our attorney from last year.
Say that again, please.
The content is not regulated by this ordinance.
That's the original verbiage.
The parts
I
that's
was going
stripped
to
out.
change that to, because there's been a big push about not having the words cannabis or marijuana on signs. So that's why I was going to change that. I've been informed that that original statement that I wanted to change came originally from the town attorney. So we're
Now
going
I'm
to leave that
completely
alone.
confused.
I am more confused than I was.
So they want to
Yeah.
keep the content of signs is not regulated by this
The
section.
content of the signs.
Yes.
So
I
we're
was going
going to unstrike that, and
We're
the
gonna
rest of
unstrike
that
it.
sentence goes away.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
Pretend
All
that,
C.
pretend
Undo
that
that.
was never
Yeah.
there.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
No, the whole amendment's going away. The whole amendment.
That whole,
Oh,
all of C
C.
is getting left
No,
alone.
C's staying as is.
Pretend-
Right, okay.
Pretend
It's not
nothing-
changing.
Pretend nothing on that page exists above F, and F's the only thing you need to concern with. The rest is going to stay the way it was.
So
Okay.
what C will say is only what is stricken out.
Right. Content of signs is not regulated by this
That's
section.
all it will say.
Okay.
So you get the First Amendment stuff.
Yes. Freedom of speech.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right.
one use.
I agree. I didn't
And-
like that. I was like,
Well, it's
I mean, I don't
been
want to-
something that's been being
Yeah.
pushed, so I was going to bring it to the front, but actually, we've been very fortunate that our marijuana and cannabis people have been very cooperative on that
Yeah.
aspect anyway.
Yeah.
So,
So-
so then we just added the directional signs for this in the general sign language carried
So
over from the
with
home
F, properly licensed home occupations shall be allowed not more than one official business directional sign, OBDS. The OBDS must be permitted through the MDOT and comply with all OBDS requirements.
Doesn't it tie back to the other thing we
Yeah.
talked about?
Yes.
It's a
Okay.
copy and
Okay.
paste.
All
It
right.
just puts
Gotcha.
it in the sign
Got it.
section
Okay.
as well.
Yep.
So now we're talking into dimensional requirements.
This was not me, so these are Jeremy's suggestions, so I'm bowing out of this conversation.
So this talks about minimum lot sizes.
Almost 4 acres.
And the only change is R3s.
2 changes to the R3.
Minimum lot size with public sewer and water, and minimum lot size with septic in square feet.
160 grand.
That's
Oh, that's 160,000 square feet.
Square feet, yeah.
Like 3.5 acres.
Yeah.
Do you have anything?
I mean, the idea of this is to prevent small lots in R3.
R3 zone.
Which, I mean, that just is trying to limit how many subdivisions you can.
Residential agriculture.
Right.
But
Well, I think
subdivisions do
themselves
clusters anyway.
are controlled in R3.
Yeah.
The amount of building permits and houses you can build in R3 are controlled.
Mm-hmm.
I think, making almost a 4-acre house lot in R3 is excessive, in my opinion.
Yeah. I would agree with that as well. You go from R2, which is 20,000, which R3 is, right now is at 90,000. So that's a huge jump when R1's only at 10,000. So 10,000, 20,000, 90,000. I mean,
I think the thought process is not to make R3 into an R2 or R1 by cramming them all together.
Right.
But 160,000 is excessive for one single individual house out in R3.
Right. Whether we raise it or keep it, I guess that is the question. I don't think 160 is the right number.
I mean, 90,000 is like 2.3
43,500
acres.
Yeah.
Which is a weird, I mean, if you're going to do it by square feet, I guess, but if you're going to do it by acreage, I would have rounded it
As
to
a good
2.5.
As a good compromise, is 3 acres reasonable for that area?
I think one of the things that we should consider, if I may add some input, Jeremy and I and James and Mike had a pretty lengthy conversation about the preservation of farm and forest land here in town. And one of the things that came up, and one of the things that was brought up by somebody sent an email, I think, was that, one of the things we want to be careful of is to not devalue a farmer's retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Farmer may have 100 acres, and we now just cut that property value in half,
Right.
by doubling the density requirement.
Right.
So I think that the
And
balancing.
it might not be the farmer, but it might be their kids that they don't want to farm anymore, and they want to sell the property.
Tom mentioned it from the 70s. He said, he saw, the kids don't want to come into the farming business, so the farmer sells a lot to pay the taxes this year and eat. Sells a lot. So and most farmers, that is their IRA. So I'd be reluctant to raise it above it's over 2 acres now. So it's 87,000 square feet is 2 acres. It's already over 2 acres.
Yeah, because if you have 10 acres and you keep it where it is now, you can do 4 lots. But if
Right.
you have 10 acres and you change it to 3 acres even, you're only getting 3.
2 or 3 acres.
Yeah.
It's math. That's hard.
Well, right, but I guess the question is, at what scale is it? Like, if it's, like you said, if it's 10 acres versus 100 acres versus
Right.
1,000 acres,
Right.
we want to protect farmland, but if someone has 10 acres of farmland, they should be able to divide it in 4 spots.
Right.
But if someone has, but at the same time, it's who are we to say that, all right, 10 acres, you can subdivide that in 4 ways, but then when you get past a certain number, you have to spread
Yeah.
it out more.
So I
mean,
guess if I think about it in the opposite terms, I have a 2.3 acre lot and I have a house on it, and I have a septic on it, and I have a well on it, and I have lots of room around the rest of the property to walk, and I think it's plenty big enough for a house. And if I had to have 3 acres or 4 acres, what am I now doing with all of that extra land? So in my personal opinion, where we are at 90,000, even if it only went to 100,000.
And
I
are
don't
you
think-
R3?
I'm R3, yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same position. I like 2.3 acres, R3, and got plenty of land.
Yeah.
Plenty of land.
I think more land, yeah, it's going to save more land, but only for that one homeowner.
Right.
You know, I mean,
All right, so I feel like we're all in agreement that we are not changing that.
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, so we're striking those out.
Also, the other issue, which is well taken, is that if you do have a farmer who wants to cut a certain portion of his land off for some sort of development, which is his right, in the R3 area, all of a sudden you're cutting the value
Because IRA.
significantly
Yeah.
for them,
And-
and that's
and-
fairly arbitrary.
You know, we had a lengthy conversation about one of the things that we're looking at is doing a, what do you call that, development rights?
Probably it's called a density development fee. So basically, the idea would be you'd be able to pay into a fund to add density to a project to be able to add
By
lots.
protecting other property.
Yeah, and that fund would go to the purchase of open space.
Right, so there's an example of, you know, a farmer has 100 acres and he wants to transfer his development rights to somebody else to build in where we want the high-density development. You do this, you just cut his retirement in half.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, another example.
Yeah.
I think one way to achieve the same idea is to look at, with conventional subdivision, planning board can require 5 to 10% open space within a subdivision. I would propose considering upping that to 20%. And then for a cluster, right now it's 30%. So looking at increasing that to maybe 40 or 50%. I don't talk about 50 might be high, but maybe 40%. But requiring more open space and putting more regulations around what open space is preserved is another way of kind of getting to that same idea of increasing the minimum lot
Good idea.
size.
Do we have that?
No, I forgot.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the green space, my thought is if we increase that, we should be able to also make the lot sizes smaller. So that has that
More
give and take.
You're saying more general green space, but smaller individual lot requirements.
Right,
so what's
exactly.
the minimum on a cluster? What's the minimum lot size
It's
for
like
a cluster?
30% right now, right?
You mean lot size?
Yeah.
Or green space?
Lot size.
Your lot size is you have to, you can't do any more in a cluster than you can do in a traditional. So whatever your traditional lot size, if your parcel would only allow you to build 10 conventional lots, break 10 conventional lots based on your dimensional requirements, then you can only do 10 in a cluster.
The lots themselves can be pretty small.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
lots can be tiny at that point. It
Yeah.
just becomes,
It's just for infrastructure
It's-
costs and stuff
yeah.
like that.
But
Everything's
it's-
closer together, so like instead of building massive amounts of roads, massive
Yep.
amounts of piping and stuff like that, it's all condensed into a local area.
So it's based on the overall size of the project.
Of the parcel.
Not necessarily,
Yeah.
it has to be like 0.9 acres.
no.
No,
It's,
you still need to meet the
your
dimensional
conventional,
requirements. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So your conventional layout, if you were not doing a cluster, has to meet all those same dimensional
Yep.
requirements. So if you changed that, that would change all of that as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on, the next change was in 6.3.1 residential growth limitation provisions. So we're striking out A and B.
James, you're gonna get.
Part of that proposal would be to replace it. This is proposed by Cyrus as well. He brought in a growth limitation ordinance from North Berwick, and the proposal is to replace it with a 33 dwelling unit cap, which would be the average of the past 10 years, plus 5%, 5% of the average of the past 10 years. And that is the lowest we can go by state law. So 33 would be, if we wanted to put in a growth cap, 33 would be the lowest cap that could be put in.
So, all right. So
With the growth cap, I think that we're trying to cap it in certain areas. Because, like, downtown, R1 zone, we shouldn't be capping it. We should be trying to promote it. Because that's where everyone wants the growth, is in the downtown area. Maybe we should try and think of trying to cap it in more rural areas and not just as in general.
Yeah, if you took this kind of the same approach, if you took the average of the past 10 years and added 5% in like R3, it's more like 14 or 15.
Okay.
So you can put the limit at R3 and aquifer protection. So basically R3.
I mean, R3 is huge in Berwick.
There's a major correlation between R3 growth and the town growth. I mean,
Right.
R3 is the driver of growth. So I can provide that to the board, some of that data, just so you can
Because
look at.
we've
what
had
those
this
look like.
conversation about, limiting growth, and because there's a conception that, the town is growing at an unsustainable rate, but all the data proves that that's not true. So why would we be trying to limit growth?
One of the reasons is just limiting, kind of regulating the spikes to kind of smooth out some of the most costly things to the town are spikes, because you have to increase classroom sizes so you can spread it out a little
Right.
bit.
The last
That's one of the
major
reasons.
spike was in the 80s. That's the population. I mean, we went from 1,800 to 358 in the 90s. And then now in 2010s, we're at 745. I mean, this is in thousands, so we're at like 7,500 range. I mean, I kind of agree with Les at that point. I mean, I understand the thought of this is we're trying to limit the growth in the R3 because we're trying to protect farmland. But how are we going to protect farmland fairly? Because at the same time, it's like what Les just said about even the lot sizes. How are we trying to devalue someone else's property by limiting what they can do on it?
Can I derail the choo-choo train? So listen, I have a question for James because I have one issue with 6.3.1. Is this looking like it will, whatever is going to replace this is going to replace it in time for the vote? Or if not, can we look at adding that that correction that we need to based on what happened out on Wentworth?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That just, it goes by like a technicality about just clarifying.
I would like to just clarify it in there. So my issue with 6.3.1 is when you read this, and we actually had to go to the attorney for this because what happened is there was a subdivision that was approved through the planning board, and it was just lots, and the lots were sold for intent to build. Now, it was the subdivision itself was split in two zones. The fourth building permit I received would have been under 6.3.1 if you read it with a certain slant, absolutely not approvable. However, the person that purchased that lot had already sold their home, had a handicapped partner, was forced to live in an unsafe, unhandicapped, accessible place. I reached out to the attorney because I was like, what the hell are we going to do here? And because where the already approved permits fell into different zones, if you read this with the other slant, then you can have 3 permits per year, per subdivision, per zone. So we just want to clarify, I want to clarify that so that it is on the books and above board, that if this does not get replaced, I would like to see that clearly drawn out, as the attorney says that it can be. So I would like to put that little bug into your ear if this does not get replaced before the voters, because I don't like anybody having any reason to question if what I'm doing is what is legal and right by the residents.
I think I would like to see what we would be replacing this with before we strike anything out.
Okay, so
I mean that just makes sense.
Did the attorney have any recommended language for what would pass legal muster? Because we could speculate all day, but it still has to pass.
No, he did not, but whatever we write up, again, just a reminder for the whole board, you guys write things up, they go to the select board, and then they go to the attorney. So anything that's not worded right, he knows what my intent is with that, because obviously he and I had several long conversations about this. If I word it wrong when I present it to you, he'll fix it.
Okay.
He'll make it legal, because he knows what I'm trying to do, and it was a situation where I was glad to see that the vagueness played out in the favor of the resident who was, in my opinion, slighted and put in a very terrible position.
Okay.
What you're talking about replacing is already right there. Next page. If you turn one more, Mike, it's right there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's replaced with growth ordinance proposal.
There's 3 pages of, right?
Yeah, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying if this whole section doesn't get replaced with the growth ordinance proposal, if that doesn't happen in time for this set to go to the voters, then I would like the addition of that clarification to this existing to be placed. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm clear as mud.
Which allows the building of 3 houses per zone.
Per zone, per subdivision, just to make sure that nobody questions that what we're doing is above board.
With the growth.
And for you guys too.
But would you want to also? I just thought of something. Would you want to have the percent, like what percent of that lot is in which zone? Right? If it's only a very small percentage of the parcel is.
I'll write the verbiage up for that. What I based it on for this
isn't as a zone, the zone that is the majority of the lot is that lot zone. So if you
yes and no, because under code, like your setbacks, if you are partially in R2 and partially in R3 and you build that house in the R2 section, those are your setbacks. If you build it in the R3 section, those are your setbacks.
Right.
One of these lots is split pretty much 50-50.
Okay.
So it might actually even be worth putting it.
I'm just pretty sure that it's in the land use ordinance that if it's the majority of one, it's classified under that.
And
but I understand what you're saying. Like when you're building and setbacks,
we should add something for those 50-50 lots that in the event that if it's 50-50.
Yeah, pick one.
Where's your house going?
Yeah,
we go. I mean, if your lot is divided, why would you not go with the more lenient? To benefit the landowner.
Depends on
it depends on what you plan on doing with it, because
and it depends on what the ordinance says.
If it's for agriculture use, you can have more animals in R3 than you can in R2, like density wise, and that's the only way I see it is because
I just want to make sure that we get something in there to clarify that it's.
Okay.
Based on the zones, because I don't want people thinking that I am not just the residents. I don't want the board thinking that I am taking what you guys are saying and then just throwing it out the window. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Looking at this growth management permit thing, we don't set the pricing. Right. This is saying 250 and 200, whatever. We don't set the pricing. We just recommend a price. And then the selectmen vote on that. Is that going to be enough, or is that too much, or that's on page 2 of 3 on that.
This is copied from North Berwick? Is this what this is?
Don't look at me. I had nothing to do with this one. I backed right off 6.3.1.
I'm not a fan of North Berwick's growth management permit. process.
Okay.
Because again, this is what I was talking about, and it's limiting the amount of permits. And if I'm
Right.
not
We don't
mistaken,
want to. We don't want to do that.
They actually limit multifamily permits to 6 per year.
Oh wow.
6 growth permits per year. So it's really counterproductive. That's why North Berwick is actually called No Berwick.
Oh, can I back you guys up for half a second?
Yeah.
I noticed a strikeout on 6.3.1.e for determining number of permits to be issued if a parcel is split or conveyed into 2 parcels. It looks like they struck out 3 years
Yes.
prior.
I went to 5.
Put
Yeah.
5.
I was actually going to bring that up too.
I don't know who did all this stuff.
I'm
but I agree with-
against changing that.
Right, and that's what. So that stuff that was struck out.
It was just that number was
We
changed.
wanted to replace it with this. They wanted to replace it with this.
I'm assuming that
They're
said,
trying to limit the growth.
Well, I'm not sure
but-
who did this, but I'm assuming, based on my experience with subdivision law, that they went from 3 to 5 because 5 years is lot split for subdivision law. So they're probably trying to bring who did this? Cyrus, okay. Like how I say that so accusatory. Who did this? Sorry, James. I'm not hangry. I'm just getting sleepy. So that's what I'm assuming is, but I have no opinion either way. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
we didn't skip something that Terry was going to ask me if we missed later, because I don't want to have to answer to her either.
Yeah.
Are we going to leave that at 3 or what?
Was that what the consensus is?
I've heard the rumors about you. Terry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
So leave it at 3.
Leave it at 3.
Let's hold off because reading subdivision growth permit restrictions. This is part of that. The total number of growth management permits issued for apartments and subdivisions located in any zoning district shall not exceed 75% of the total number of growth management permits being issued in a single fiscal year as determined pursuant to section 6.3.4. If the number of growth management permits issued for non-subdivision lots on a first-come, first-served basis exceeds 45% of the total number of growth management permits being issued in a single fiscal year, then the maximum number of growth management permits allocated for apartments and subdivisions, i.e. 75% of the total number for the fiscal year, shall be reduced accordingly to accommodate a proportionally greater number of non-subdivision allocated lots. In no instance shall the total number of growth management permits issued within a fiscal year exceed the number established by the Board of Selectmen.
Wow, those were certainly all words.
That is, if anything, I would want to simplify what we have instead of making, like, we're taking a less than a page thing and turning it into a 3-page
Edition.
thing on limiting growth. Which, like Les said, we shouldn't be limiting growth when Maine says that there is a housing crisis. We don't have enough homes for everyone. And it's not just us, our town. It's
And
the
there's
whole
no
state.
data to say that we're growing at an unhealthy rate.
Right. There is no spike yet. I mean, if there was a big spike and maybe...
I don't think, quite frankly, I think that the economy is cooling off. The housing market is cooling off. I think that the housing market itself is going to correct or prevent any spike.
Yeah.
It usually does.
So would consensus be that we're just going to table this for later?
I would think so.
Do we have any mechanism for growth management though? In the event, the data changes, is there any mechanism in place?
Well, we'll just come back to it and say, hey.
Yeah, twice a year, right?
Yeah.
Twice a year we have a mechanism to put it before the voters.
And our current mechanism is the 6.3.1 that was originally struck out.
Right.
That's our current one.
Right. The A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
So let's
And
just...
that's the original
So
mechanism.
20 permits in a given subdivision. The one that's struck out, residential growth limit provisions.
That's for R2.
All right.
Yeah, that's with public sewer
Per
and water.
subdivision.
Yeah,
Okay.
in town it's, public utilities is 20, and well and septic is 3.
Yeah. So are we in consensus that we're going to hold off on this?
I think we need to.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So this is getting tabled.
Yep.
When do you want us to throw this back in your?
We can keep talking
You guys-
about it any meeting that.
Give
I
you
mean-
guys a chance to review it.
Yeah.
Maybe in a couple of
I can
meetings.
show you what an R3, just so you can see what it looks like.
You gotta speak up on the mic. Sorry.
I can,
Wow.
I can
Council
tell
the
ya.
boss.
I'm not the boss of you guys.
That's why he's the chair.
I have no authority here. So. Yeah, no, I can just show you what an R3 cap looks like, just so you have information on that.
Yeah.
Just what it looks
Okay.
like.
Thank you.
I mean, if the average is 14 to 15 houses are built a year in R3, I mean, or subdivisions are, that's still not that much. If it was like 1,000 or 500, then we're talking serious numbers here, and then that's a huge concern.
We haven't even issued that many permits for the whole town. So.
Right. So.
Well, I think that limiting wherever basically where there's no water and sewer to 3 permits a year is going to.
It slows them down a lot.
It's going to slow them down,
Oh, yeah.
because from a development standpoint, you got to buy the land, you got to get it through engineering, get it through the planning board. There's a huge outlay of money up front to sell 3 lots
At a time, yeah.
at a time. So that in and of itself is going to slow the growth in those areas for sure.
Yep. All right. So this one is Brendan and Julia Cooney. Some things are not really related to what the planning board. It's like one's just a comment about the playground. They're happy that the playground's finally getting finished. Ample parking and traffic flow planning with project construction. I mean,
Looks
they're
like they'd like
talking
that
about the
traffic.
edge at that point. I mean, basically, I know with the edge, the traffic studies aren't going to happen until it's all built. They did the parking stuff and they have enough spots, and then if there is a higher demand and flow, then that's when all the traffic studies are going to get done. Is that correct, James?
We've done a traffic study. We know that there's a backup for the light.
Yeah.
We have some ideas that could help alleviate, but the congestion at our intersections. Our intersections actually work fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, most of our intersections where they are required to do pedestrian improvements.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of their requirement through the DOT.
Mm-hmm.
They have to do some significant pedestrian. But overall, their intersections have been studied that they will work even with the added traffic. It's just obviously the traffic light is an issue.
Yeah.
There's things that we can do to improve it, we added a right green arrow. That's one way that could help alleviate some of that congestion. But
Well, the traffic going across the bridge from Somersworth, how do you fix that?
I think the
That
bulk
is
of
the
this.
Bridge, tunnel.
Yeah, tunnel.
Double-decker bridge.
Yeah, double-decker bridge.
I think a lot of this stuff is town manager and our public works. So I'm going to
Right.
very unceremoniously say, "Hey,
Yeah,
James, you want
pass
to check
that
this
off.
out?"
I mean,
James?
another thing I was looking at is limiting further marijuana dispensaries. I mean, the town just voted on removing the cap, so I mean, it's kind of contradictory to what the town just voted on.
Well, I think that it speaks to the fact that this is like a well thought out thing from a citizen's point of view.
Yes.
Right? And a little bit emotional, don't we have enough?
Yeah.
I get that.
Right.
100%. I validate that.
Yeah.
But it all comes back to what meets the land use ordinances.
Right.
And change comes from changing the land use ordinances.
Right.
So that's where I'd like the public to understand Yes, your opinion is important, but the
But-
change takes place
You
in.
got to look at the land use ordinance,
Correct.
and then see what
How it
needs
applies.
To, yes, what needs to be changed.
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing, though? I do
Yes.
think that when we put out an invitation for ideas and thoughts and opinions, that we're going to get
We have to know more of this.
a pretty wide array.
Oh yeah, and they need to be heard.
That's
I mean, we
right.
need to see
Yeah.
them. It's.
And
we
we-
just need to see what is adjustable and what's just an opinion of
What's
something.
actionable, what's
Right.
not.
Right.
Right, but it's great that people are actually
Yes. Oh yeah, it's great to get
taking the
feedback.
time
I mean,
to
feedback.
write this.
And we made sure that you guys were provided. Well, Terry made sure you guys were provided with copies of everything, but she
Yes.
and I had discussed it. And even though some of the things that came in were obviously not planning board purview, we don't want to discourage anybody from sending anything in because she and I do not mind being the clearinghouse to get the things that are perhaps public
Right.
works related to them or town manager related to him. We want to hear from people regardless of who we have to direct it to.
Right.
That's very important. I'm glad Terry brought that
Well
up.
said. Thank you. All right. So moving on. That's a pretty good view of the land use ordinance amendments.
Moving forward, and new business, review of planning board policies and procedures. So I messaged James a couple weeks ago asking for a copy of this, and then I figured that we could go through this. There's a few things that we need to adjust. Like with number 1, the Berwick Planning Board shall consist of 5 regular and 2 alternate members. The town's already voted that we're just 7 regular members. So changing it of 5 regular and 2 alternates just to 7 regular members. That would be one of the things.
That takes care of a bunch of the next few ones.
There's a couple. It's like the number 4 with the quorum. It changes the quorum from 3 to 4.
There's also a cross out on 2, then.
Regulars and appoint.
Yes, yeah.
Alternates for
Yeah.
1 year, there are no alternates.
Right, yeah. Alternates would be stricken out. We would not be voting on this today. It would be the next meeting. We basically would discuss these today, and then the next meeting we'd be voting on this stuff. But this is just to kind of tighten up.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Oh,
See ya.
On number
Thanks,
4,
thank you.
what was the change on number 4?
The quorum for a regular or
Is
special
5.
meeting shall be established when 4 members are
4.
in
Thank
attendance.
you.
And then it would be stricken out that alternate members may be used
Yes.
to establish the quorum when so authorized by the chairman.
Right.
So-
Back up, number 3, the
Yeah.
secretary may be regular or alternate member
Yeah,
of
that's
the board.
also. So I'll just kind of go through them, I guess. So number 2 is regular members shall be appointed by the Board of Selectmen for staggered 3-year terms.
Period.
All members shall be sworn as required by law. Appointees must be legal residents of the town of Berwick when appointed and while serving. When there is a permanent vacancy, the board chairman is to notify the municipal officers who must, within 60 days of its occurrence, appoint a person to serve for the unexpired term. Number 3, officers of the planning board shall be chairman, vice chairman, and secretary. The chairman and vice chairman shall be regular members of the board and shall be elected for 1-year terms at the first meeting in January.
Can we eliminate the secretary, John?
No.
Nice try, though. Aim for effort.
So we'd have to bunch. It would be the chairman, vice chairman, and secretary.
And then you could take out shall be regular members of the board because
Right,
they
right.
are.
It would just be they shall be elected for 1-year terms at the first meeting in January, and then all the alternate member stuff would be stricken out. And then it also the planning office secretary shall serve as clerk to the board. I mean, there isn't really any clerical things.
That's Terry.
Excuse you. Who do you think is editing these? There is 2 clerical stuff.
Well, I'm saying for for
He
you
was
guys
talking
there
to-
is. I'm saying for the board.
Yeah.
We don't have.
But that's why we serve
Why
as your
not get rid
clerk.
of that last sentence? Do we need that?
Well, this says the planning office secretary. It doesn't say the
Okay.
planning board secretary.
There's no.
Yeah, the planning.
I mean, we
office
could strike
secretary.
out secretary and just say the planning office, if that makes more sense.
Sure.
I like that.
There you
Okay.
go.
I like secretaries anyway.
No, number 4, no official business may be conducted without a quorum present. A quorum for regular or special meetings shall be established when 4 members are in attendance. We're striking out alternate members, so then it goes to if any member has or has been declared by the chairman to have a conflict of interest, said member shall not be counted in establishing a quorum for that case. If a member has not attended all meetings when the application has been considered to include public hearing, if any, and has not fully familiarized herself with the records of meetings not attended, that member shall not be counted in establishing a quorum.
Should that be and/or? Because if you're not present for a meeting, but you review the material and familiarize yourself, you can still be a voting member, is my understanding.
Right, that's what it says. If any, and has not fully.
And/or. It should be.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's saying, that is saying hard, you have to have been at the meeting and you have to have reviewed all the things. I think it should be an and/or, so
Yeah,
it gives you the latitude. If you missed a meeting, but you caught up on all the paperwork, you could still be a voting member.
Yeah.
And I think that's reasonable, if everybody agrees.
I think so, right after if any, and/or has not fully.
And/or.
Oh, because how I understand it right now is if you have fully familiarized yourself with the records of the meeting, not attended.
Yeah, I think it makes sense the way it's written.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
If a member has not attended all meetings,
When the application has been considered to include public hearings, if any, and has not. This is just saying if you haven't fully familiarized with yourself,
Oh,
you
I got you.
cannot.
I got you. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you for helping us,
Yep.
little kid.
Oh yeah, don't worry.
So just do your homework.
If you do your homework, you get to vote. Otherwise, keep your hands to
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah. And all you have to do is just state that you've, either talk to me or talk with Irish or Terry and say that I wasn't at the meeting, but
I reviewed.
I have watched that last meeting and I'm up to date with everything. That's all that has to be said.
Yeah.
In the event a quorum is not present, the board members are authorized to request that the chairman reschedule the meeting to another date and to adjourn the meeting. If the date is other than a regular meeting date, the secretary is responsible for providing adequate notice to the board members, municipal officials, and the general public.
Should that be changed to the clerk?
Clerk, yes.
The clerk.
The clerk is responsible,
Yep.
not the secretary, because we love you,
Well,
Paul, but
Hold
Who's the
on.
clerk?
Hold on.
I'm
No,
the clerk?
she's not a clerk, is she?
Yeah.
yes,
I am?
because the planning office
says up here,
shall
Shall serve as
clerk
clerk to the
borough.
board.
Oh, okay, okay, all right.
So we need to
okay.
change that
Previously
Yeah,
to.
to the
defined.
clerk. Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thanks for explaining
I've
that
never
to this
been a
little
clerk
kid, Phil.
before.
We're sharing the brain over
Well, I
there.
just wanted to make sure.
Oh, you
I didn't
two
even
do
know
what
I
we
was
do.
the clerk.
She has
Yeah.
one cell, I have one cell, and we kind of like bash them together and make it
Rosen
work.
was the shortest serving secretary in history.
All right.
He's just itching to get off that.
Good luck.
So number 5, all matters other than final votes or where the chair requests a call of roll shall be decided by a show of hands. A simple majority of the members voting shall be sufficient for any motion properly seconded to pass. When a motion results in a tie vote, it fails. That should be all right. Number 6, regular meetings shall be held on the first and third Thursday, for each month unless such day is a holiday. If such is the case, the meeting scheduled for that day will be canceled. Oh, excuse me. No meeting will be held during the first week of July or the third week in December unless the board, by a majority vote, determines that such a meeting shall be held. Number 7, special meetings may be called by the chairman or in his or her absence by the vice chairman or by a majority vote of the planning board. Number 8, no regular, cross-out alternate member shall be allowed to participate or to vote in any discussion or deliberation of the board when that member has declared or the board has determined that the member has a conflict of interest in the case under discussion. Conflict of interest means direct or indirect pecuniary interest, which includes pecuniary benefit to any member of the person's immediate family, to his employer, or to the employer of any member of the person's immediate family. It also includes a situation where the board member, by reason of interest, is placed in a situation of temptation to serve the member's own personal interest instead of the public's interest. Any question of whether a member must be disqualified from voting on a particular matter must be decided by a majority vote of the members present, except the member who is being challenged.
So I have two things to say about that. One is just a kind of a grammatical thing, is towards the end when it says of whether a member must be disqualified from voting on a particular matter. If you're recusing from discussing also. So it's not just the vote. It's about, like, if we think somebody should be recused.
Right.
So it should say whether a member must be recused, and that covers discussion and voting, as opposed to here it's just saying only from voting, disqualified from voting. Does that make sense? Like, any question of whether a member must be disqualified from voting on a particular matter. Well, you can't have discussion and then say you can't vote. Right? A recusal is you can't do either.
I think recusal is a separate matter.
Yes.
I think this is in the event, like something came before the board, and it was if there was discovery that led everybody up here for the most part is a gentleman and will recuse themselves.
I would think is voluntary. While if you're voted as a conflict of interest, you're forced into it.
I think that's the difference.
So it
That's
kind of
the-
comes up
that's the
after
line
the
in
fact
sand.
as opposed to.
I think a good example, Rick, would have been if you did not recuse yourself on the Woodland.
Yep.
The board members could have voted to recuse you.
Yep.
If you did not recuse yourself.
And I think the intent is that that discussion would happen prior to any discussion about the actual project.
Right.
Right. No.
So-
yeah, you would think.
Yeah.
But like you said, though, in discovery, it might come out.
Right. Yeah.
You know
Yep.
that. Oh shoot! I'm related to the engineer's
Right.
daughter's friend or whatever.
And a reasonable person would recuse himself.
Correct.
Yeah. It's to keep unreasonable people reasonable, I think.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
the,
So then the other thing was, and I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but in my situation before, I was recused from discussion and voting, but there was a procedural problem that the board did not follow. And I was not allowed to say, hey, wait, stop, time out, we can't do it that way. I wonder, should there be an opportunity for a recused member to be able to at least call a point of order for a procedural issue?
I think any member of the community can do that if you go up to speak publicly, unless I'm mistaken. Like you can raise that.
The public can't, but if a majority vote of the planning board can.
But I wasn't
So-
allowed to speak.
The chair can say no, and if other people of the board vote it out, it can get changed. But if the chair says no, it's a no. Or if the chair says yes, it's a yes.
So, would I ask permission if I could say something in that situation?
Yes.
And you would say yes or no?
Yep.
And if you said no,
And other people in the board wanted to hear what you had to
they
say,
could vote majority.
they could veto that. Yep.
Okay.
That's reasonable.
And we
So I
will-
guess it just needs to be clear that a recused member can ask permission to speak under certain situations.
But yes, not on the procedure, but not on the question.
Well, I guess it would be up to the chair to decide whether they could speak on whatever they're asking for.
Right.
Can I ask one question, Rick? Are you referring to the meeting? I believe there was a public hearing. I believe you recused yourself. There was a public hearing, but then a lot of things were talked about and discussed. The public hearing was then closed. More things were discussed, and you had asked to at that point, make a statement.
My
Is that
statement was going to be procedural. In other words,
Oh.
we could go back, I don't want to,
Right.
but basically, we were given a plan, we voted to approve the plan without getting copies of the plan, then we took that back the next meeting, then we did the exact same thing the next meeting, when we shouldn't have again, but we let it go through, and we never went back and talked about it again. So that second time we did the exact same thing, I wanted to say we can't do this again, but I wasn't allowed to speak. I'm just wanting to make sure that there is a clear written policy that says somebody in recusal can ask permission for input and then either be told no and vetoed or not.
In addition to the public hearing portion, which you are allowed as a recused.
In that case, I
person.
could.
Yeah,
Right.
as
So you're
a member
talking
of the
about-
public, you have the right to speak in a
Yeah,
public
but that
hearing.
was closed. And
After
it was,
the public hearing.
so maybe
it's-
after the public hearing,
Yes.
clarify it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what you're referring to?
Yes, I think
Once the
so.
public hearing is closed?
Correct, yes,
Okay.
because I had every opportunity as a
Mhm.
public person.
Right.
But it didn't come up until it was time to vote.
Right.
That makes
So-
sense. Yep, I see that now.
What is the, so we don't have anything addressing that
No.
right
No.
now?
No. Not at
So it
this
would need to be a whole new paragraph?
Yeah.
Well, you
How about let's finish going through this and then
Sure.
we'll
Yeah, let's
circle
do
back
You
to
can
that.
slide it in
All right,
9
wait.
and 10 because you
I
can
can't
scratch
move
both.
past the
Yeah.
spelling error here.
We're gonna fix.
Yeah, we
we're
got
gonna
the
fix-
spelling errors, there's two we found so
Yeah.
far. Matter
Matter
and
with one
vice
finger.
chairman is,
All right, now I can move on.
okay.
So number 9.
What, you don't
Doesn't-
want to have
doesn't
Mater
apply
from
anymore.
Cars over here?
Number 9 does not apply anymore, so that gets stricken out.
Number 9 is completely struck.
Well, I guess we know where we're putting the new.
Yeah, the new one will be number
And
9.
number 10 does
Yeah,
not.
and number 10 is also
Relevant,
Scratch
okay.
including
because that
alternate
talks about
members.
alternate.
We could cross alternate members
Yep.
out of 11.
Out of 11, including alternate
So
members.
yeah, so number 11 is any member may make a
second
may
motion.
make a second motion
Singular.
and make and second motions.
Second motions,
Yes.
yes.
That's
So
correct.
you can make it and second, and then strike out including alternate members who have been authorized to vote by the chairman.
Yes.
And then, notwithstanding that the chairman presides over the meetings of the board, she may make and second motions and participate in the board's deliberations, as may the other officers of the board.
And actually, number 12 covers Rick's issue.
Okay, so number 12. If anyone in attendance at a board meeting wishes to address the boards, they may do so with a permission from and at the discretion of the chairman or a vote of majority of the members present. The chairman may define the scope of discussion and may decide when the speaker has stepped out of order or otherwise moved beyond the defined parameters of the meeting. Speakers will be allotted 5 minutes to speak and will not continue past the prescribed time frame. At the discretion of the chairman, an additional 3 minutes of time may be added to the original 5 minutes if deemed necessary. No one will discuss any pending litigation. Under no circumstances shall anyone other than board members be allowed to question or address anyone appearing before the board without permission of a majority of the board members present, and all such inquiries shall be made through the chair.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
at the beginning, the first sentence says they may do so with permission from and at the direction of
You
the
said
chairman. Do you want
discretion.
that to be discretion? Because it does say discretion.
You
two
said
sentences
discretion,
later.
and
Yeah.
it says direction.
Okay.
But
So-
but 2 sentences later, it does say at the discretion.
Right.
So do you want that? Does the board wish that to say at the direction
think it's-
or at the
I
discretion?
think the way it's worded is fine. No.
Yeah, I think it's
We'll just leave it the way it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're saying two things there.
Yeah. Well,
They're
I
saying
just
they may do so with permission and at the direction of the chairman. So
I know,
the
but where he
discretion
said
is the
discretion,
permission.
I wanted to make
Yeah,
sure that he
and-
wasn't wanting
right.
verbiage change. So
How I am interpreting that is they would be directing their questions and concerns to me.
I
Or the
understand.
chair, that, you know.
I understand what it is, but I didn't know
Okay.
if you wanted to change that word because you said something different, which
Okay.
obviously changes the
I don't-
tone
I don't
of
think
the
so.
whole
It's-
thing.
it's-
So needed to know.
And this looks like
permission
the-
is discretion.
Right, and that's for the 3 minutes
Webster?
additional.
That's
Webster, is
exactly-
that you?
that's what I was gonna
Webster's
say.
dictionary.
Well, it's two things. It's saying that they may do so with the permission from, and at the direction of the chairman.
But he said something different than what was there, so I was
he
clarifying.
just-
I said
inadvertently
He
said
inadvertently
discretion
said it,
instead
but I
of.
wanted
Oh,
to clarify.
okay, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
you
sorry.
That's okay.
inadvertently said
That's-
something different, but I needed to clarify
Okay.
for us because
Yes.
if you wanted that different, then we need.
Okay, my bad.
No, it's not a big.
Number 12 is all about a board member, correct?
Yes.
A board member.
So it looks like.
No.
That's
No,
anyone
it's
in
anybody
attendance.
This is
that wants
if
to.
anyone in
Anyone
attendance
in
at a
attendance.
That
at a board meeting.
Right.
include
That would have
encompass board members. That would.
Yeah.
Yes,
think
and when
anybody
you
in
recuse
attendance.
yourself, you become a member of the public and you are a person
Right.
in attendance. So
Get
that
your
would
5
be where you would
minutes
get
and
your,
the other 3 at the discretion.
that would be when you could speak up with the permission of the
But it
board.
does not say at the public hearing portion or anything like that. So it
No, it
seems to
just
me
says-
like you can ask for that permission at any point.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think it goes like you did today.
Okay, so
That's right.
so then this would be talking about what you were just.
I think so.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So
We
next.
all agree on the
13, if any board member misses 40% of the regular planning board meetings in a 6-month period, the planning board shall ask the Board of Selectmen to declare a de facto vacancy and to appoint a replacement.
That's how you get it replaced.
How about the planning board may ask? I mean, if there's a reason for it, and we still have 6 members who are here most of the time,
Well, this
And we're
this
never
is
letting Mike go, so.
could be a health issue or something. I don't know.
right. I don't know because shall has teeth, may does not. It's all a relative because this is in a 6-month period. So 6 months we have 11 meetings. So 40% of that is you basically have to miss like 5 meetings in a 6-month period.
What are you really contributing at that point?
Right. I mean, you'd have to catch up a lot. And if you caught up, so
Yeah.
should
Okay.
we just add a clause that says that if you're up to date?
Well, I think by changing it to May, it kind of does that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Or
But I think having a clause in there that says, because like if you just miss 5 meetings in a row and you don't get yourself up to date, you're gonna get kicked out.
But
Yeah,
that,
but
that
that's your
gives you
May.
the permission
That
to
gives you the
ask that
permission.
permission. to-
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't tie your
But then
hands.
again, you also
so case by
have-
case, like if somebody had
Yeah, you don't
an
have
extended
to ask.
illness,
You
can.
like if
Yes.
somebody
Right.
was out for an extended
We had-
illness,
we had
you're
a
like,
couple
oh,
of
okay,
people
well,
who just never-
that's
You would make
reasonable.
an
But if
exception.
somebody's
Yeah.
just
We'd
duffing
have to
off
get
the
off them.
meetings,
Right.
Yes.
yeah, can them.
Right.
You would know that
Right.
that's happening. You just put it to vote.
That's how we got here.
Yeah.
It also makes it,
Yeah.
we would have to keep track of
Fast, slow
attendance,
kids.
and it would
Well,
be,
we're
it would be
suppo-
mandatory to kick someone off the board.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Well, how it's written now, that's how it
That's
is.
exactly
It's
right.
supposed to be a mandatory
Yes.
thing,
Right.
Yes.
which there is no vote to it.
Right.
It's,
That's right.
This is if you miss 40% of the regular meetings in a 6-month period,
Right.
you shall
Right.
declare a de facto vacancy.
Has anyone missed 40%?
One a month.
Oh, no, let me think.
Well, I mean, if you miss it and you don't publicly state that you're up to date, I mean, you
Right.
can't
Well,
vote on it.
that's how you get rid of it, right? You miss it, but you watch the meeting.
Right.
Right.
You didn't really
Well,
miss it.
that's-
Right.
So perhaps if some of you want to keep shall instead of may, you could put a second line in there that says
I
the
think it's-
public acknowledgement of having watched the
think it's
missed
fine the way it
meeting
is.
shall
It's-
negate the absence.
We're all reasonable
Well,
people.
I think the word may kind of takes care of it.
Well, that's what I
Instead it
think,
puts
without
it at
adding
their
anything.
discretion. They can.
But
Actually-
whose discretion is it at? Because if we say may, then we're adding it to a vote, or we're making it a chair discretion.
It's your discretion.
You know what?
I'd rather.
Maybe we ought to leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
Because you can say, just as we could have tonight, I'll do it on Zoom. So you can be away and
Right.
still get
I'm just
and
worried about
participate in the meeting
instance
instead of just watching it on.
So you got to define what misses a meeting is.
So I guess my only concern would be the event of a medical emergency with a board member or a spouse possibly that would cause them to
That'd be a
miss.
long medical emergency.
It
though.
would.
Yeah.
But
It would,
That's
but
happened in the past.
yeah,
It has.
but it has, and what happened is they got voted out or declared de facto, and someone else took their spot. And then after that said period of time, like that, because it's just
When there was an opening, they
They got back on.
right.
okay, so leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
Leave it
Okay.
Okay.
It's reasonable.
Okay. So number 14, these policies and procedures may be changed or amended by a majority vote of board members present at a regular meeting after the proposed changes have been read at one previous regular meeting. So that's why we're not voting on it today. 15, the invalidity of any section or provision of these bylaws do not invalidate any other section or provision of these bylaws.
That is an of. not
That's
an or.
that's
Yeah.
as legalese.
Yeah, and then 16 is the site walks. The site walk is for informational purposes only. It is our opportunity to review the actual site to get a feel for the project. The chairman of the board conducts the site walk. If the chairman is not available, the vice chair will conduct the site walk. Please assist in keeping the site walk group together. Anyone asking questions should be encouraged to save them for the public hearing phase. Hearings are televised, which ensures ensures that it will be in the public record. It is imperative that multiple conversations between board members and the public do not take place. Other board members present at the walk should refrain from taking questions from the public or providing answers, but instead direct them to the chairman. All board members shall remain together during the site walk. At no time shall a member walk away from the group to engage in private conversation, which that we just added.
So the last part about at no time shall a member walk away, when we had a situation where an abutter didn't have, I'm sorry, I hit the mic, didn't have physical capability of joining, a member walked over and talked to them.
Yep. How we talked about that before, and what needs to happen is that, it needs to be directed toward the chair, and the chair has the discretion to go over there and discuss it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have to say that today I was primarily with the group, but at one point I found myself standing next to the fire chief and had a conversation with him today, so I probably shouldn't have done that.
So,
It's not a perfect. I mean,
so you're right. We're social people. We're going to talk, right?
Right.
But I did notice that as the gentleman who was speaking, Dennis, I looked around and there were times when 2 or 3 or 4 of us were nearby, and 2 or 3 or 4 of us were not. And then we didn't all catch everything he said because A, he wasn't necessarily talking loudly, and B, we weren't grouped together as a board. We were spread out amongst the population. And I think that we should try, as a board, to be a group as a board in listening to the applicant closely, so that we can avoid coming here and going, well, I didn't
hear that.
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
Ju-
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not picking on Paul.
No.
I'm really not.
No, hey, I
Paul,
confessed. I
Paul.
confessed.
I'm not.
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
All right.
I
Thank
have
you, Rick.
just one
All right,
thing,
Paul. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I didn't know if on when we had the session with the town attorney, and he had, when we talk about conflict of interest, and going back to paragraph number 8, and he had mentioned that if a member does have, if there's any appearance of a conflict of interest, that member should make a statement at that point and saying, yes, the applicant is my brother-in-law and plows my snow, but I do feel I can be impartial in hearing this application. And so he did mention that, and I didn't know if you wanted to incorporate anything like that into this paragraph.
I think that's important. I think that the person has an opportunity to say, it looks like it's a conflict of interest, but here's why not. I think that you're correct. My opinion is that
Maybe a self-disclosure
Well,
clause.
I
where-
think that also would go into the voting of it too.
Yes.
Because
as long as they're allowed to discuss
Right.
their part.
right. Because I mean, if someone brings that up, saying, you know, it looks like this, but I can stay impartial and I will follow the land use ordinance, and
Right.
then we could vote as a board to say, whether you are or not a
Yes,
conflict of interest.
that's right.
Yeah.
So it's really just adding a sentence to this paragraph, I believe, or two.
Yes. Like,
After.
Well,
Disclosure, like
no,
you said.
because it's
Are you saying?
no regular member shall be allowed to participate or to vote in any discussion or deliberation of the board when that member is declared or the board has determined that the member has a conflict of interest.
So during that determination is when they could talk.
Right, that's when we would determine
Oh,
it,
so you
and
don't
that's
need
when
that
we
in
could
there.
vote. I mean, if you're going to voluntarily recuse yourself, that's one thing,
That's right.
but if you bring it up and we discuss it, then
Yeah.
we're already
I think Terry's at the spot right before that last sentence you were saying, because she's
Right.
saying, should there be something in there stating that you should bring it up?
Yeah.
Yes, Terry? Is that where you're going with that?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what
Okay.
he was saying.
Well, that's what you
So-
said. You said self-disclosure statement. Just
Yeah, just a self-disclosure
Yeah.
statement. If you think that there could be
There
a
might be the
perceived
appearance, yeah.
self-disclosure of a perceived conflict of interest, shall be discussed and voted on by the board.
I think that's an ethics issue.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I mean,
So we might reword that, Phil, but that's.
I think that's good
yeah.
foundation to start.
Yeah. Nice. All right, so that was a review of that. Second public comment.
There is none.
No one on Zoom.
We killed them all.
Hannah, do you have public comment? No. No, you're not town member, sorry.
We all looked over, I should return back to.
We're still waiting for the appearance of the cat.
She's in her office.
Oh, that's right,
Yeah,
that's right.
smiling
No
'cause
cat
we-
at the office.
We know you're not asleep now.
Yeah, she's listening. Informational items.
So I have one, and I don't want to get into it because we've been here a little bit tonight for very long, but it basically involves Article 10 of the subdivision regulations, which is inspections and enforcement of approved final plans. And basically, my question was, and I went into the town hall and talked to Terry about this the other day, what do we do after a plan leaves here in terms of, not necessarily what we do, what is the procedure when a plan leaves here finalized in terms of making sure the developer's doing what they say we ask them to do? So Article 10 talks about that. My question is, and I have not even spoken to Irish about this at all, so I don't even know the answer.
Hi.
Is are all of these steps being followed to check on things? And then going back one step back to Section 8 in subdivision regulations, letter O in 8.2, it says a list of construction items with cost estimates that will be completed by the applicant prior to the sale of lots and evidence that the applicant has financial commitments or resources to cover these costs. This is a document that the developer will give to the planning board and code enforcement and the town, whatever, saying these construction items that cost this much are going to be done before I sell a lot. Is that list exist in any of our subdivisions that we do? And is it enforced if it is? And my question is because at Woodland Pond, they are currently in the beginning stages of the project, and 2 lots
We
are
can't
for sale.
discuss.
Okay. I know of a development where they're currently in the process of working on it, and there are 2 lots for sale.
So, quick answer to your questions.
Yes.
We receive the engineer reports. And any reports that I need to have provided from an actual developer, you can just turn your head to the left and ask him how it went down with me trying to get the information that I needed for MS4. Because he came into the office and I said, oh, by the way, while you're here, I need you to do this. So, yes, they do get followed up on.
Okay.
Okay. And as far as that, if you guys ever see anything, as far as the what they have to do, their lists of what they have to do in providing those lists, that's how we determine what their bond is going to be.
Yeah, they do.
So they
post.
have to provide that because they have to provide that so they can post their bonds or their security bonds that allow us to allow them to even start.
Okay.
Okay.
Performance and security bonds.
Yeah.
So we get that stuff. So
All right.
it's a short, quick answer.
Perfect.
We do have one other informational item. So Y'all wanted to know information about the damn water department, but nobody answered. 2 people answered Terry's email.
Hey,
one,
I answered.
One answered. 2 answered Terry's email.
Nope.
Do y'all want to go on a field trip to the water department and find out how it works?
Yes.
We don't have any snacks. Just
I'll make some.
No snacks involved.
I made snacks for everybody for Christmas, and most of y'all didn't show up to get them, so.
I ate mine.
You did.
I
you
did.
You did.
Yep.
In
Listen,
fact,
guys,
can we schedule that?
What's that, Hannah?
Are there
I
any
got
left
no
over?
you didn't come get yours either. It was s'mores bark. It
Look,
was
we got it
really
right
good.
here for you. We're just waiting for you.
You just can't see it. It's under the table.
Actually, I had to throw it away because it sat in the office for 2 weeks, and I was like, no, I'm good. So, yes.
I'm a
Show
yes.
of hands
Oh,
who wants to
yes.
go?
Yes.
Field trip?
How does
Les, you don't want to go on a field trip to the water department?
I'm falling asleep.
He's
I'm like,
checked
it's my
out.
bedtime in
He
2
is
minutes.
checked out.
Same.
It's past
yeah.
my bedtime.
All right, so we'll get that scheduled.
So, is there any? Everybody have a job? Does anybody have a day off? Is
Thursday
there a good
nights
day?
are good. Yeah, Thursday nights.
Thursday night.
Off planning board nights.
How about I shoot for a late afternoon
Yeah.
on a Thursday?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
When there is no planning
An
board.
in between.
Yes.
An
Or
in
site
between
walk.
week.
I'll bring the
Or
beer.
site walk.
Yes.
I'll
Yes.
bring the beer.
I'll see if I can make you guys some more goodies.
Or honor guard practice for the American Legion.
Late afternoon on a Thursday. I'll shoot for late in January or early February.
Perfect.
Okay.
I won't be here.
Thank you.
You won't be here?
Any other
Where are you
informational
going?
items?
No,
On
I'm
the
waiting for
Philippines.
this.
Oh,
If there are no further items for consideration from the esteemed Burgess Meeting Room in the depths of the Berwick Town Hall, I would make a motion that we adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep. Thank you. Good night.